You have just woken up as an eagle in a rocky nest high on a mountain ledge. For the next 3 hours, you are going to experience your very first shaky flight, a heart-pounding hunt, and even a wild thunderstorm, and this won't be easy, so good luck. But before we dive into this journey of an eagle, I'd appreciate it if you could subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and which animal you'd like me to cover next. Now let's begin this epic adventure together. The world begins as rhythm, a steady thrum, thrum, thrum that has always been, will always be, the only sound in this curved universe of calcium and warmth. The heartbeat is not your own, not yet, but it wraps around you like a lullaby, constant as tide, reliable as stone. In this perfect darkness, you float in fluid suspension, curled tight as a nautilus shell, every cell humming with the patient alchemy of becoming. The shell that holds you is no mere container, but a cathedral of microscopic architecture. Pores breathe for you, allowing whispers of mountain air to seep through, carrying scents you cannot yet, namepine resin, granite dust, the metallic tang of snowmelt streams far below. Your mother's body heat radiates through the shell walls, a gentle furnace that keeps your growing bones and sprouting feathers at exactly the temperature they need. She shifts above you sometimes, a rustle of powerful wings, a soft scrape of talon on stone, and you feel the tremor through your enclosed world. Days pass, or perhaps weeks' time has no meaning here in the amber glow that filters through your shell when she rises to turn you with her beak. The yolk that sustains you grows smaller, your body larger, until you fill nearly every curve of this oval sanctuary. Your neck bends at an awkward angle now, your head tucked beneath a wing that will someday cleave the sky with surgical precision. But for now, these wing buds are tender things, delicate as unfurling fern fronds, pressed against your flanks in the growing crowded space. The first crack comes not as violence but as relief. Your egg tooth, that tiny, temporary spear at the tip of your beak, finds a stress point in the shell and pierces through with a sound like breaking ice. A thread of light, brilliant and cold, slices into your darkness. The outside air rushes in, and your lungs, previously useless, fluid-filled balloons, suddenly remember their purpose. Your first breath is sharp as winter, clean as starlight, carrying flavors your enclosed world never held. Cliff roses blooming impossibly from granite cracks, the musk of small mammals in the valley below, the ozone scent of storm clouds building beyond distant peaks. The crack spreads slowly, a fracture line following the shell's natural fault. Each movement of your body widens it, each stretch of your cramped limbs opens your prison a little more. The work is exhausting, harder than anything you've ever done, though you've never done anything at all. Your muscles, untested and new, burn with the effort. Rest comes in brief moments when you lie still, gathering strength, listening to the world beyond your breaking shell. Your mother senses the change immediately. Her massive form settles more carefully over you, and you feel the gentle vibration of her voice, a low, crooning sound that your developing ears translate as comfort, as encouragement, as love too vast for any language. She does not hurry you, does not try to assist in this most solitary of journeys. This breaking free must be yours alone, but her presence wraps around your efforts like a promise. I am here. I will always be here. The crack becomes a window, then a door. Fragments of shell fall away, revealing glimpses of the vast architecture that will be your home-weathered granite, rising into blue infinity, stick and moss woven into a platform wider than your body will ever grow to fill. The eyrie perches on a ledge that would make mountaineers weep with vertigo, but to you it feels solid as the earth's own bones. Light floods your vision as the shell splits wide enough for your head to emerge. The brightness is overwhelming after so long in amber darkness. You close your eyes immediately, then crack them open just enough to let the world seep in gradually. Colors exist here that your enclosed world never held: the deep blue of high-altitude sky, the silver gray of granite, the rich browns and greens of moss and lichen painting the cliff face in subtle murals. Cold touches your wet feathers for the first time, and you shiver involuntarily. The downy fluff that covers your body is soaked from your cramped quarters, matted and dark. But within moments of exposure to air, it begins to fluff and dry, transforming from sleek darkness to pale grey softness. Each tiny feather is a miracle of engineering hollow-shafted for lightness, arranged in precise overlapping patterns that will someday trap air and create lift, but for now simply serve to hold warmth close to your fragile body. Your mother's beak appears in your limited field of vision, impossibly large and sharp, yet it touches you with the gentleness of falling snow. She preens away fragments of shell membrane, cleaning your feathers with delicate precision. Each touch sends waves of warmth through your exhausted body. Her tongue, rough but careful, cleans mucus from your nostrils so your first breaths come easier. The rest of your emergence happens in stages. One wing works free, then the other. Your legs, folded tight for so long, slowly straighten until you can feel solid nest beneath your splayed feet. The sensation of texture of twigs, soft moss, the occasional smooth pebble floods your nervous system with new information. Everything feels enormous, overwhelming, wonderful. Your first real sound is not the sharp cheep of songbirds, but a hoarse whisper, barely more than breath shaped into meaning. Yet your mother answers immediately with her own soft call, a sound that resonates through her chest where you now rest, pressed against her warm breast feathers. The conversation means nothing in any human language, but its import is clear. You are here, you are safe, you are mine. The broken shell lies scattered around you now, curved fragments that once held your entire existence. Some pieces are translucent in the mountain light, revealing the intricate blood vessel patterns that once fed your growth. Others are opaque, chalky white, with a faint pearl sheen. Your mother will eventually eat these calcium-rich fragments, waste nothing of the miracle that brought you into being. Your eyes, still adjusting to this bright new reality, begin to focus on details. The massive golden orb of your mother's eye, pupil dark as midnight, studying you with an intelligence vast and ancient. The wickedly curved tip of her beak, designed for tearing but now used only for the most tender ministrations. The landscape beyond the nest cliff faces marching into blue distance, valleys lost in morning mist, the whole earth spread below like a living map you will someday read fluently. Exhaustion finally claims you. The work of breaking free has drained reserves you didn't know you possessed. Your head grows heavy, your vision blurs, and you settle deeper into the warm sanctuary of your mother's breast feathers. She adjusts her position slightly, creating a perfect hollow where you fit as if shaped for this exact purpose. Her heartbeat, no longer muffled by shell and fluid, drums against your tiny form different from the rhythm you knew before, but just as comforting, just as eternal. Sleep comes like a gentle tide, carrying you away from the overwhelming newness of existence into dreams that feel like floating, like flying, like soaring on wings you do not yet possess. Tomorrow will bring hunger, will bring the complex lessons of survival in this vertical world. But for now, in these first precious hours of life outside the shell, there is only warmth, only safety, only the profound peace of being exactly where you belong. The cliff wind whispers past the eyrie, carrying scents and stories from the vast world below, but they are for another day. For now, this small circle of nest, this gentle guardian presence, this steady heartbeat beneath your cheek, this is universe enough. Downy nestling days. Your first awareness each morning comes wrapped in wings. Vast primaries spread above you like a feathered cathedral ceiling, blocking the harsh mountain light, creating a warm amber twilight where your small world can unfold gently. Your mother's breast feathers form the floor of this sanctuary, each plume soft as cloud down, warm as summer stone. You nestle deeper into this living cradle, feeling the steady expansion and contraction of her breathing lift and lower your tiny body in an ancient rhythm. Hunger announces itself as an insistent hollow beneath your breastbone, a gnawing emptiness that drives your first instinctive behaviors. Your neck stretches upward, bill gaping wide in a silent plea that needs no words. The gesture is automatic, programmed into your very bones, this supplication toward the sky, this desperate reaching for sustenance. Your throat vibrates with the effort of calls you cannot yet voice properly, mere whispers of the demanding cries you will master in days to come. Your mother responds before you even realize your own need. Her massive form shifts above you, wings adjusting to maintain the sheltered space while her head descends toward your upturned face. She carries breakfast in her cropfish partially digested, softened to precisely the texture your delicate system requires. The scent reaches you first, rich, oceanic, carrying mineral notes of deep lake water and the green taste of aquatic plants. The feeding is intimate beyond any human understanding of the word. Her beak, that fearsome hook-tipped weapon that can snap bone and tear hide, becomes an instrument of impossible tenderness. She opens it slightly, revealing the soft pink interior of her mouth, and regurgitates small portions of processed fish directly onto your tongue. The food is warm, pre-warmed by her own body heat, seasoned with enzymes that will help your developing digestive system break it down efficiently. You swallow reflexively, your throat working in quick gulps that draw the nourishment deep into your growing body. Each mouthful brings not just sustenance but security, proof that this vast guardian presence will provide everything you need. Between offerings, she pauses, watching you with those enormous golden eyes that miss nothing, not the way you tilt slightly to the right when swallowing, not the small contented chirp that escapes when your crop fills, not the gradual relaxation of your body as hunger transforms into satisfaction. The nest around you tells stories in texture and scent. Ancient sticks, weathered silver by countless storms, form the foundation platform. Some are thick as your entire body, carried here by your parents' incredible strength over seasons of building and rebuilding. Others are delicate twigs, woven through larger branches to create the tight matrix that keeps eggs and nestlings from falling through gaps. Moss grows in the crevices, emerald cushions that soften hard edges and provide drainage when mountain rains sweep the cliff face. Your siblings' presence shapes these early days in ways you're only beginning to understand. There are two others in your shared world, one slightly larger, having emerged from her shell a day before you, the other smaller and perpetually struggling to claim his fair share of parental attention. The hierarchy establishes itself not through violence but through subtle assertions of presence and need. The largest chick naturally positions herself closest to mother's head during feeding time, her longer neck giving her advantage in reaching the source of food. You learn to navigate this complex social structure through a combination of instinct and observation. When the morning feeding frenzy begins, you must be bold enough to stretch your neck high, to gape wide, to make yourself impossible to ignore, yet careful not to push so aggressively that you tumble from the prime feeding positions near mother's chest. The smallest chick often gets nudged to the edges, forced to wait for second helpings after you and your sister have had your fill. But fairness comes in other ways. Your parents, with their ancient wisdom, rotate feeding priorities. Sometimes the largest chick gets first attention, sometimes you do, sometimes the smallest receives the choicest morsels. They seem to sense which of you needs more protein for rapid growth, which requires extra calcium for developing bones, which has expended more energy in the constant small struggles of nest life. Their decisions appear arbitrary but follow patterns too complex for your developing mind to grasp consciously. Between feedings, your world becomes one of exploration within the tiny boundaries available to you. Your legs, initially weak and unsteady, grow stronger each day. At first, you can barely lift your own weight, must rely on wings and chest to propel yourself across the nest platform. But gradually, your feet learn to grip the textured bark of nest sticks. Your legs develop the power to push your body upright for longer periods. The surfaces beneath your feet teach lessons about the larger world beyond the nest rim. Smooth sticks speak of wind and weather, of seasons of exposure that have worn away rough bark and sharp edges. Rough bark tells different stories of newer additions to the nest structure, of the ongoing work your parents do to maintain this aerial home. Moss compresses under your weight with a satisfying give, while bare stone, visible between nest materials, offers cold hardness that makes you appreciate the softer spots even more. Your feathers develop in fascinating stages that you observe on your siblings as much as feel on your own body. The initial down that kept you warm in your first days begins to darken and lengthen. Pin feathers emerge like tiny spears through your skin, wrapped in waxy sheaths that gradually break away to reveal the flight feathers you will need to leave this eyrie. You spend increasing amounts of time preening, using your bill to carefully remove the sheaths and smooth the emerging feathers into their proper positions. Your siblings become both competition and comfort during these growing days. At night, you huddle together when your parents are away hunting, sharing body heat and creating your own small, safe space within the larger nest. During the day, you might squabble over the best feeding positions or the softest sleeping spots, but these conflicts are brief and rarely escalate beyond gentle pushing and soft protesting sounds. Your sister, being largest, often takes on a protective role despite her own youth. When sudden sounds startle all three of you, the crack of settling wood in the nest, the distant cry of another raptor, the rumble of thunder from storms building over far peaks, she positions herself between you and the smallest chick, her developing wings spread in a miniature version of your mother's sheltering posture. The gesture is instinctive, unreasoned, but it speaks to behaviors that run deeper than thought. Sleep comes frequently in these growing days, your body channeling enormous energy into development. Between feedings, you often drowse in the warm shelter of your mother's presence, dreaming vague dreams of movement and flight. Sometimes you wake to find yourself alone with your siblings, your parents away on hunting expeditions that can last hours. During these times, the three of you huddle close, sharing warmth and waiting with the patience that seems bred into your very bones. The mountain weather teaches its first lessons during these nest-bound days. Morning mist often shrouds the eyrie, turning your familiar world into something mysterious and strange. The nest materials become beaded with tiny water droplets that taste fresh and clean when they collect on your bill. Afternoon thunderstorms bring dramatic temperature drops and the sound of rain drumming on stone, sending all three of you burrowing deeper into the nest's protected center. Your parents' comings and goings create the rhythm of your days, the sudden shadow that passes over the nest as one returns from hunting, the soft thump of powerful talons gripping the nest edge, the rustle of massive wings folding against powerful bodies. Each arrival brings the possibility of food, of fresh nest materials, of brief moments of contact with these enormous beings who dominate your small world with their presence and their protection. Your mother's preening sessions become highlights of your daily routine. Her massive beak, so careful around your delicate body, removes bits of shell membrane still clinging to new feathers, adjusts your position when you've worked yourself into an awkward sleeping posture, gently cleans the soft skin around your eyes and bill. These grooming sessions speak to bonds deeper than survival necessity. They are communications of care, of belonging, of the fierce protective love that drives all her behaviors. The nest begins to feel smaller as your body grows and your awareness expands. What once seemed like an entire world now reveals its boundaries more clearly. The rim, where nest materials end and empty space begins, draws your attention more frequently. Beyond that edge lies mystery, vastness, the source of winds that bring strange scents, and the destination of your parents when they vanish into blue distance. But for now, these boundaries still hold. The nest remains your universe, your siblings, your primary society, your parents, your entire understanding of what adult eagles can be. Each day brings small changes: stronger legs, longer feathers, keener eyesight, more complex understanding of the social dynamics that govern your small family. You are preparing for flight without knowing what flight means, growing toward independence while still completely dependent, becoming eagle while remaining, for these precious weeks, purely and simply yourself. Feathers of first light. The transformation begins as tiny spears emerging through your skin, each one wrapped in a waxy sheath that catches the early morning light like miniature candles. Your first real feathers push through the soft down that has kept you warm through your earliest weeks, and with them comes a new understanding of what your body is becoming. You can feel each pin feather as it develops, a slight pressure beneath your skin followed by the odd sensation of something growing outward, beyond the boundaries you've always known. Your wing buds, once mere suggestions beneath your downy covering, begin to take on the unmistakable shape of flight instruments. The primary feathers emerge first, long and straight, their tips still wrapped in protective sheaths that you learn to remove by carefully working them with your bill. Each morning brings new sheaths to crack open, revealing the dark, glossy flight feathers that will eventually carry you through mountain thermals and across vast distances your nest-bound mind cannot yet imagine. The preening becomes an obsession, a necessary ritual that consumes hours of your day. Your bill, growing stronger and more precise each week, works methodically along each emerging feather. The waxy sheaths crack under gentle pressure, falling away like flower petals to reveal the intricate architecture beneath. Each feather is a marvel of engineering, the central shaft strong yet flexible, the barbs branching at precise angles, the barbules equipped with tiny hooks that zip the flight surface together into an unbroken airfoil. Your siblings undergo the same transformation, and the nest becomes a workshop of mutual grooming and discovery. Your sister, still the largest of the three, develops her flight feathers most rapidly. You watch with fascination as she stretches her wings for the first time, the newly emerged primaries catching air in ways that make her wobble with surprise. The sensation is clearly intoxicating. She repeats the motion again and again, each time holding the stretch a little longer, feeling the wind's pressure against feathers designed specifically for this purpose. Balance becomes your first major challenge as your body changes shape and weight distribution. The compact, ground-hugging form of your earliest weeks gives way to something taller, more angular, equipped with appendages that seem to have their own ideas about where they want to go. Your legs grow longer and stronger, but coordination lags behind strength. Simple movements that once felt automatic now require conscious thought and effort. Your first attempts at standing fully upright end in comedic tumbles that would be alarming if they weren't so obviously part of the learning process. Your feet, equipped now with talons sharp enough to grip the bark of nest sticks, sometimes get tangled in the complex weave of your home's construction. Your wings, extending further each day, catch on protruding twigs or your siblings' bodies as you try to navigate the increasingly crowded nest space. The area itself reveals new complexities as your improved vision brings details into sharper focus. You begin to notice the incredible craftsmanship of your parents' architecture, how larger sticks form the structural foundation, providing strength to support tons of weight, while smaller twigs create intricate basketwork that prevents eggs and nestlings from falling through gaps. Fresh green branches, still bearing leaves when your parents carry them home, speak of ongoing maintenance, of the constant work required to keep this aerial home secure and comfortable. Your exploration of the nest geography becomes more systematic as your mobility improves. The center, where you've spent most of your early weeks, offers the softest materials and the most protection from wind and weather. But the edges hold their own fascinations, views through gaps in the stick construction that offer glimpses of the cliff face beyond, air currents that carry scents from the vast world below, the solid security of the granite ledge that forms your home's foundation. The morning routines take on new significance as your developing body requires different types of preparation for each day. Your parents' grooming sessions become more complex, focusing now on the emerging flight feathers that must be kept in perfect condition. Their bills work with incredible precision, removing sheaths, aligning barbs, distributing waterproofing oils from special glands near their tails. You learn to present different parts of your body for grooming, turning, and positioning yourself to give them access to hard-to-reach areas. Your own preening skills develop rapidly out of necessity. Feathers left unattended quickly become damaged or misaligned, compromising both insulation and eventual flight capability. You spend increasing amounts of time working on your wing feathers, learning the proper pressure to crack sheaths without damaging the delicate structures beneath, discovering how to zip barbs back together when they separate, developing the flexibility to reach every part of your expanding wingspan. Wing exercises become irresistible as your flight feathers reach functional length. At first, these are simple stretching motions reaching one wing fully away from your body, feeling the satisfying extension of joints and muscles designed for this movement. But gradually, the exercises become more complex and purposeful. You begin to coordinate both wings simultaneously, creating symmetrical movements that make your entire body feel different, lighter, as if some fundamental aspect of gravity has shifted. The wind becomes your first flight instructor, though you don't yet realize it. Mountain thermals sweep across the eyrie throughout the day, and your developing flight feathers automatically adjust to catch and redirect these air currents. At first, the sensation is startling. Your wings want to lift you, even when your feet are firmly planted on the nest platform. But gradually, you learn to use the wind's pressure for balance, for small adjustments in position, for brief moments when your weight seems to diminish. Your feet grow more skilled at gripping various nest surfaces as your talons develop their full strength and precision. What began as simple grasping motions evolve into complex manipulations, adjusting your grip to accommodate different stick diameters, maintaining balance while reaching for food or preferred sleeping spots, learning to release and re-grip without losing your position. Your toes develop independent control, allowing you to adjust individual talons for optimal purchase on irregular surfaces. The nest sticks themselves become a jungle gym for developing coordination skills. You learn to navigate from one end of the platform to the other, using careful foot placement, wing adjustments for balance, and increasingly confident movements across surfaces that would challenge an experienced climber. Smooth sticks require different techniques than rough bark. Thick branches demand different approaches than delicate twigs, and gaps between materials teach lessons about precision and commitment. Your smallest sibling, still struggling to keep pace with your development and your sister's, becomes both inspiration and responsibility. You find yourself naturally moving aside to give him access to the best feeding positions, using your developing wings to shelter him during sudden weather changes, positioning yourself between him and the nest's more dangerous edges during your exploration games. These protective behaviors emerge without conscious thought, driven by instincts deeper than individual survival. Sleep positions change as your body assumes its more mature proportions. The tight huddles of your earliest weeks give way to more spread-out arrangements that accommodate longer legs, broader wingspans, and individual temperature preferences. You still seek warmth and security through contact with your siblings, but now you also claim your own space, arrange your feathers for optimal comfort, and position yourself to take advantage of favorable microclimates within the nest. Your parents' hunting expeditions become more fascinating as your eyesight sharpens and your attention span lengthens. You begin to track their departures and returns, noting the directions they take when leaving the eyrie, the different positions they assume when scanning for prey, the various altitudes they choose for different types of hunting. Their successful returns, marked by the satisfying weight of fish in their crops, become predictable based on subtle signs you're learning to read. The world beyond the nest rim grows larger and more detailed each day as your vision develops toward its ultimate acuity. Distant peaks that were mere shadows in your earliest weeks now reveal individual cliff faces, snowfields, and forested slopes. The valley floor, invisible for so long, begins to show patches of meadow, the silver thread of streams, the geometric patterns of human settlements far below. Each day brings new details into focus, expanding your understanding of the vast territory that surrounds your small aerial home. Your voice develops new tones and volumes as your body matures. The soft peeping of your earliest days gives way to more complex vocalizations, questioning calls. When your parents approach the nest, contentment sounds during feeding and grooming, alert cries when unexpected movements catch your attention. You begin to understand that different situations call for different types of communication, and you experiment with various sounds to achieve specific results from your family members. The morning light takes on special significance as your feathers reach sufficient development to interact meaningfully with sunlight. Your dark flight feathers absorb heat efficiently, helping regulate your body temperature during cool mountain mornings. The way light catches your plumage becomes a source of visual fascination, the subtle iridescence of properly aligned barbs, the play of shadow and highlight across your expanding wingspan, the satisfying sight of your own growing magnificence reflected in your siblings' admiring attention. The nest platform, once vast enough to contain your entire world, begins to feel genuinely confining as your wings reach their juvenile proportions. Simple movements now require wing adjustments to avoid tangling with nest materials or siblings. Your exercises become more ambitious, more insistent, driven by growing awareness that these magnificent appendages are designed for something far grander than the small aerial platform of your birth. Edge of the abyss. The first time you truly comprehend the vast emptiness beyond your nest's rim comes not as revelation but as vertigo. So profound your young mind reels backward from the knowledge. You have ventured closer to the edge than ever before, drawn by your developing courage and insatiable curiosity about the source of the winds that constantly whisper across your home. One moment you are focused on the familiar architecture of woven sticks and moss. The next you are staring into blue infinity that has no bottom, no boundaries, no comprehensible end. The cliff face drops away beneath your perch in a sweep of granite so sheer and endless that your newly developed depth perception struggles to process the information. Far below, impossibly, dizzyingly far, the mountainside eventually gentles into forested slopes that look like green carpet from this height. Streams catch sunlight like scattered silver coins, their actual size and power reduced to mere decorative elements in a landscape that stretches beyond every horizon. The world, you realize with a shock that makes your pin feathers stand on end, is enormous beyond any previous understanding. Your mother, returning from a hunting expedition with breakfast weighing down her crop, chooses this moment to demonstrate the casual mastery that will someday be yours. She approaches the eyrie not by climbing or walking, but by materializing out of the empty sky itself. One moment the air beyond the nest is vacant blue. The next she fills it completely 8 feet of wingspan, catching thermals with microscopic adjustments, primary feathers automatically flexing to maintain perfect control. Her massive body suspended in space, with an ease that makes flight look as natural as breathing. She does not simply land on the nest platform, but rather transitions from flight to perch in a single fluid motion that speaks of decades of practice. Her approach angle takes her past the nest rim at eye level, giving you an unprecedented view of flight mechanics in action. Her wings, fully extended, reveal the intricate feather adjustments that create lift, control direction, manage speed. Each primary feather operates independently, responding to air pressure changes too subtle for your developing senses to detect. Her tail fans wide, acting as both rudder and brake, while her legs extend forward to absorb the impact of touchdown with powerful grace. The sight triggers something deep in your genetic memoria recognition that floods your nervous system with conflicting signals of terror and desire. This is what you are designed for, what every aspect of your developing anatomy anticipates, yet the gap between your current earthbound existence and this aerial mastery seems unbridgeable. Your wings, impressive though they've grown, suddenly feel inadequate to the task. Your understanding of balance and coordination, hard-won through weeks of nest-bound practice, seems laughably primitive compared to the three-dimensional chess game your mother just played with wind and gravity. Your father's hunting returns provide additional demonstrations of aeronautical excellence that both inspire and intimidate. His approach patterns vary with wind conditions, prey loads, and the time of day, but each landing represents a masterclass in applied physics. Sometimes he arrives in a steep dive that transforms into an elegant flare just above the nest, his wings cupping air to break his descent with precision that would challenge human engineers. Other times, he materializes from below, riding updrafts along the cliff face to rise smoothly to nest level with barely a wing beat. You begin to spend hours studying these demonstrations, your young mind attempting to catalog the movements, the wing positions, the subtle weight shifts that make controlled flight possible. Your siblings join you in this observation, the three of you lined up along the nest's inner rim like students in an aerial academy. Your sister, being the most advanced in her development, occasionally attempts to mimic some of the simpler movements, spreading her wings to catch passing breezes, adjusting her stance to maintain balance against sudden gusts. The wind itself becomes your first instructor in the physics of flight, though its lessons come wrapped in sensations that are sometimes pleasant, sometimes alarming. Mountain thermals sweep the cliff face throughout the day, carrying scents and temperatures from various altitudes and distant locations. When these air currents catch your partially extended wings, you feel for the first time the peculiar sensation of your body wanting to move in ways that have nothing to do with your feet or your intentions. During particularly strong thermal events, you must actively work to remain grounded. Your wings, equipped now with flight feathers of nearly adult proportions, automatically cup and adjust to incoming air currents. The lift generated is not yet sufficient to overcome your body weight, but it's enough to make your nest-bound existence feel precarious in entirely new ways. Your feet grip the stick framework more tightly during these episodes, your body learning the constant micro-adjustments that will eventually become automatic in flight. Your parents, observing your growing awareness of the aerial dimension, begin to modify their own behaviors around the nest. They position themselves more frequently at the platform's edge, providing you with extended opportunities to observe their casual relationship with the vast space that still fills you with awe. They preen their flight feathers with extra attention, demonstrating the meticulous care that keeps these precision instruments in perfect condition. They stretch their wings more frequently and hold the positions longer, as if offering extended lessons in aerodynamic design. The morning thermal cycles become events of particular fascination as you learn to read the subtle signs that predict these daily phenomena. The sun's early rays striking the cliff face below create temperature differentials that generate invisible columns of rising air. You cannot see these thermals directly, but you learn to recognize their presence through their effects, the way your parents' feathers ruffle in patterns that suggest upward air movement, the effortless way dust motes spiral skyward, the subtle pressure changes that your developing sensitivity begins to detect. Your exploration of the nest platform takes on new significance as you venture ever closer to the rim where solid matter gives way to infinite space. Each approach to the edge requires more courage than the last, as your understanding of the drop-off becomes more sophisticated and therefore more terrifying. The familiar textures of stick and moss give way to granite ledge, and beyond that, nothing but air reaching to horizons you can barely comprehend. Your first glimpse straight down into the abyss comes as a shock that sends you scrambling backward toward the nest's secure center. The cliff face disappears into blue haze distance that your eyes cannot bring into proper focus. Occasional ledges and protruding rocks interrupt the vertical sweep, but they appear tiny as pebbles from your lofty perspective. The realization that you inhabit a position higher than clouds, higher than most mountains visible on the horizon, higher than any terrestrial creature has a right to be, fills you with wonder tinged by existential vertigo. Your siblings react differently to these first encounters with the vertical dimension. Your sister approaches the edge with growing confidence, her larger size perhaps giving her a different relationship with the space beyond the nest. She stretches her neck out over the rim, looking down with apparent fascination rather than fear. The smallest of your siblings remains more cautious, content to observe the edge from a respectful distance, though his curiosity clearly wars with his instinctive caution. The weather patterns visible from your high perch become a source of education in atmospheric dynamics that will serve you throughout your aerial career. Cloud formations build and dissipate according to laws you observe without yet understanding. Morning mists fill valleys like slow rivers, gradually evaporating as solar heating changes temperature gradients. Afternoon thunderstorms announce themselves as towering columns of vapor that climb toward your altitude with impressive speed. During storm approaches, your parents' behavior provides lessons in meteorological awareness that go far beyond simple weather prediction. They position themselves differently depending on wind direction, sometimes moving to the far side of the nest platform to provide windbreaks for their offspring. Their feather positions adjust to shed water more effectively, and their overall posture suggests intimate knowledge of how different weather patterns will affect the Aries microclimate. Your developing spatial awareness begins to encompass not just the horizontal dimensions of the nest platform, but the vertical realm that extends infinitely upward and downward from your position. Above, the sky deepens from pale blue at the horizon to rich cobalt directly overhead, occasionally crossed by high-altitude clouds that travel on wind streams you cannot yet access. Below, the world spreads in layers cliff faces giving way to slopes, slopes descending to valleys, valleys extending toward more distant mountains that fade into atmospheric haze. The sounds that reach your eyrie from the world below begin to make more sense as your understanding of scale develops. The distant rumble that once seemed mysterious now clearly originates from streams and waterfalls hundreds of feet beneath your perch. Occasional bird calls drift upward, but their sources remain invisible even to your sharpening eyesight. The absence of most familiar sounds, the rustle of ground-dwelling creatures, the whisper of wind through low vegetation emphasizes your separation from the terrestrial world that most life calls home. Your parents' feeding flights take on new meaning as you begin to understand the vast distances they must travel to provide for your family. Their departures from the nest send them soaring into blue space that swallows their powerful forms within minutes. Their returns, hours later, represent journeys across territories larger than anything your earthbound experience can properly calibrate. The fish they carry in their crops come from waters so distant they exist in different weather systems, different seasons of light and shadow. The nest platform itself begins to feel less like solid ground and more like what it actually is, a small island of security suspended in three-dimensional space. The sticks and moss that seemed so permanent and reliable during your earliest weeks now reveal themselves as mere temporary arrangements of organic matter, held together by engineering principles you cannot grasp and parent maintenance you are only beginning to appreciate. Beyond the carefully woven boundaries of your aerial home lies nothing but space, distance, and the kind of freedom that terrifies as much as it beckons. Leap into sky. The morning arrives with unusual restlessness rippling through your body like fever, though you feel stronger and more coordinated than ever before. Your wings, now reaching their full juvenile wingspan, refuse to stay folded against your sides. They stretch involuntarily, seeking space the nest platform can no longer provide, responding to air currents with automatic adjustments that make you feel as if some fundamental aspect of your being has awakened without your permission. Every instinct screams that today will be different, though your mind cannot yet name what that difference will be. Your parents sense the change immediately. Their behavior around the nest takes on a quality of heightened attention, their movements more deliberate, their positions more strategic. Your mother perches near the platform's edge more frequently than usual, her magnificent form silhouetted against the morning sky in poses that seem designed to demonstrate the casual relationship she maintains with the vast space beyond the rim. Your father's hunting departures become more dramatic, his takeoffs from the nest edge executed with extra flourish, as if he is providing extended lessons in the transition from solid perch to aerial to freedom. Your sister, who has been the most advanced in her development, makes the first attempt just after dawn. She positions herself at the nest's windward edge, her wings partially extended to catch the morning thermals that sweep up the cliff face. For long minutes she stands motionless, every feather responding to the invisible currents of rising air. Then, without warning or apparent conscious decision, she simply steps forward into empty space. What follows unfolds in slow motion that sears itself into your memory. Her wings snap to full extension immediately, the broad primaries automatically cupping to catch the air rushing beneath them. For a heart-stopping moment she drops, her body adjusting to the alien sensation of complete weightlessness before the miracle of lift takes hold. Her wings begin to be awkward, unrhythmic flapping that lacks the fluid grace of adult flight, but generates enough power to arrest her descent and transform it into forward motion. She does not soar with elegant confidence across the valley, as your parents do. Instead, her maiden flight resembles controlled falling with attitude, a series of increasingly confident wing beats that carry her in a wobbly diagonal toward a lower ledge, perhaps 50 feet from the nest. Her landing, when it comes, is more crash than touchdown, wings spread wide for maximum drag, feet extended forward to absorb impact, the whole sequence ending with her sprawled rather undignifiedly across a granite shelf. But she is flying, actually flying, and her harsh cry of triumph echoes off the cliff faces with infectious joy. Your turn comes not from courage, but from inevitability. Standing at the nest rim where your sister launched herself, you feel the wind's insistent pressure against your extended wings. Feel the way your body wants to respond to forces that have nothing to do with solid ground. Your parents have positioned themselves strategically, your mother, on a nearby outcrop where she can observe and potentially assist, your father circling at a respectful distance, ready to intervene if necessary. The moment of commitment arrives without fanfare or conscious decision. One instant you are earthbound, feet gripping familiar nest materials, the next you are stepping forward into space with movements that feel both completely natural and absolutely terrifying. The sensation of falling lasts only seconds before your wings remember their purpose, spreading wide to catch the mountain air that suddenly becomes your life support system. The first wing beat sends shock waves through your entire body as muscles designed specifically for this purpose engage for the first time under operational conditions. The sensation is overwhelming power flowing from your breast to your wingtips, air rushing past your face at speeds you have never experienced, the ground dropping away beneath you with alarming rapidity. Your second wing beat comes automatically, then a third, each stroke generating lift that keeps you airborne despite your amazement at finding yourself in this impossible situation. Your flight path bears little resemblance to the elegant soaring you have observed in your parents. Instead, you beat your wings frantically, maintaining altitude through sheer effort rather than skill, your course wavering as you learn to coordinate thousands of individual feather adjustments with the gross motor movements of your wings. The wind becomes a living thing that pushes and pulls at your body from unexpected directions, requiring constant compensation to maintain any semblance of controlled flight. Distance becomes irrelevant as you focus entirely on the immediate demands of staying airborne. Each wing beat represents a small victory over gravity. Each second aloft proves that the impossible has become routine. Your destination, a ledge similar to the one your sister achieved, approaches with alarming speed despite your sensation of laborious progress. The granite shelf grows larger in your vision until it dominates your entire field of view, demanding a landing you have never practiced and have no idea how to execute. Your approach resembles a barely controlled collision with the mountain. You extend your feet forward as you have seen your parents do countless times, spread your tail wide to increase drag, cup your wings to maximum braking configuration. The impact, when it comes, jars every bone in your body as your talons scramble for purchase on the rocky surface. You tumble forward, wings flailing for balance, before finally coming to rest in an undignified heap against the cliff face. But you are down safely, and more importantly, you have flown. The knowledge transforms your understanding of what you are, what you can become. Your body, which has felt earthbound and clumsy for so many weeks, reveals itself as a precision instrument for three-dimensional navigation. The air, which has always been merely the invisible medium through which your parents disappeared and reappeared, becomes navigable space, a highway system that extends in every direction from every point. Your smallest sibling's attempt comes last, driven perhaps by observing your successes and realizing that remaining in the nest is no longer an option. His flight is the most tentative of the three, his smaller size and lighter weight actually providing some advantages in the light morning winds. He achieves a longer glide than either you or your sister managed, his natural caution translating into better control during his maiden voyage. His landing, while still far from graceful, avoids the dramatic crashes that marked your first attempts. The ledges where you now find yourselves perched represent a new chapter in your development. You are no longer nest-bound youngsters waiting for food delivery, but mobile beings capable of limited independent movement. The return to your home platform requires another flight, this one upward against gravity, demanding more power and better technique than your outbound journeys. Your parents circle nearby, offering encouragement through their calls and proximity, but the work of getting home must be yours alone. Your second flight of the day proves easier than the first, though still far from the effortless soaring you ultimately aspire to achieve. Your wings feel more familiar now, the sensation of air flowing over feathers more natural, the coordination between wing movements and body positions slightly less mysterious. You manage to gain altitude gradually, spiraling upward in wide circles that eventually bring you level with the nest platform. Your landing at home base improves dramatically over your first attempt. Approaching the familiar stick and moss construction from below, you have a better understanding of the speed and angle required for a controlled touchdown. Your feet find their familiar grip on the nest materials with only minor adjustment required, your wings folding against your sides with movements that feel almost routine. The afternoon brings additional flight attempts as the addiction of aerial movement takes hold. Each launch from the nest rim feels slightly less terrifying, each wing beat more coordinated, each landing marginally more controlled. Your flight envelope expands gradually longer distances, higher altitudes, more complex maneuvers, as your confidence builds and your skills develop through repetition. Your parents' behavior shifts to accommodate your new mobility. Their hunting demonstrations become more elaborate, clearly designed to provide advanced instruction in aerial techniques you can now begin to appreciate from personal experience. They show you how thermals can be exploited for effortless altitude gain, how wing position affects glide ratio, how subtle weight shifts can change direction without requiring additional wing beats. The world below takes on new accessibility as your flight skills develop throughout the day. Ledges and outcrops that were merely interesting visual features during your nest-bound weeks become potential destinations, rest stops on aerial journeys that grow longer and more ambitious with each attempt. The cliff face reveals hidden highways of updrafts and downdrafts that your developing skills allow you to explore safely. Your relationship with your siblings evolves as you all achieve basic flight capability. The nest platform, once your entire shared world, becomes merely home base for increasingly independent adventures. You begin to split up during flight training sessions, each pursuing slightly different routes and destinations based on individual preferences and developing specialties. Reunions at the nest for feeding and rest become more social, less competitive, as the scarcity that governed your early weeks gives way to the abundance that flight makes possible. Your first successful thermal ride comes late in the afternoon, when a particularly strong column of rising air catches your extended wings during what was planned as a simple glide between nearby ledges. Instead of the steady wing beats that have powered all your previous flights, you find yourself rising effortlessly, the air beneath your wings providing lift without any effort on your part. The sensation is intoxicating pure flight without work, altitude gained through partnership with atmospheric forces rather than personal exertion. The thermal carries you higher than you have ever been under your own power, high enough to see beyond the immediate cliff faces to distant ranges that were previously invisible from nest level. The world spreads beneath you in directions you never knew existed, valleys and peaks extending beyond every horizon in endless succession. From this elevated perspective, your nest platform appears tiny, insignificant, just one small construction among countless cliff faces that march toward infinity. Your descent from this lofty perch requires new skills as you learn to manage altitude loss in a controlled manner rather than simply falling toward your destination. Your wings become variable geometry surfaces, adjusting their angle and configuration to provide exactly the amount of lift needed for whatever descent rate conditions demand. The landing that concludes this most ambitious flight feels routine despite representing achievements that would have been inconceivable just hours earlier. Evening finds you exhausted but profoundly changed by the day's experiences. Your body aches from unaccustomed exertion, your flight muscles burning with the fatigue that accompanies rapid skill development. But more fundamentally, your understanding of what you are has shifted permanently. You are no longer a ground-dwelling creature that observes flight, but a flying being that occasionally rests on solid surfaces. The sky has become your natural medium, air currents your highways, thermals your escalators to unlimited altitude. Your parents' evening return to the nest carries different significance now that you share their aerial mastery to some degree. Their landings demonstrate techniques you can now appreciate from personal experience, their casual relationship with three-dimensional space no longer seeming like magic but like skill you are beginning to develop yourself. Their pride in your achievements radiates through their behavior, their calls of encouragement, their positioning during your continued flight training sessions. Sleep comes easily despite your excitement over the day's transformations. Your body, having discovered its true purpose, relaxes into rest with the deep satisfaction that comes from using muscles and systems exactly as evolution designed them. Your dreams are filled with soaring, with thermals that carry you beyond clouds, with aerial perspectives on a world that has suddenly become infinitely larger and more accessible than you ever imagined possible. Mastering thermals. The morning sun strikes the cliff face below your perch with precise geometry, transforming granite into a massive solar collector that begins the daily cycle of atmospheric magic. You have been flying for 2 weeks now, your maiden voyage already a memory softened by dozens of subsequent flights. But today your father circles back to the nest with unusual insistence in his calls. His flight pattern suggests intention beyond routine hunting or territory, patrol broad spirals that climb steadily upward, demonstrations of technique performed slowly enough for observation and learning. Your mother joins him in the air above the eyrie, her powerful wings barely moving as she maintains altitude through subtle adjustments of feather angle and body position. Together, they create a masterclass in soaring efficiency, their massive forms suspended in space with so little apparent effort that they might be floating rather than flying. Their calls reach down to where you and your siblings perch on the nest rim, no longer the harsh cries of command you remember from your earliest weeks, but conversational tones that seem to say, "Watch carefully. This is what you must learn." Your first attempts to join them in the air above the nest reveal the vast gap between basic flight capability and true aerial mastery. While you can now maintain altitude through determined wing beats and execute reasonably controlled landings, the effortless soaring your parents demonstrate requires skills you have not yet developed. Your wings work constantly to keep you airborne, muscles burning with exertion, while theirs barely move at all. They ride invisible elevators of rising air while you labor up each foot of altitude through personal effort. The thermal column that supports their demonstration is initially invisible to your inexperienced senses. You circle the same general area where they soar with such ease, but find only normal air that provides lift proportional to your wing beat frequency. The secret they possess the ability to locate and exploit these atmospheric phenomena remains as mysterious as any other adult skill that seems impossible until suddenly it becomes obvious. Your father descends from his soaring demonstration to fly alongside you, his massive wingspan creating turbulence that actually helps illustrate the presence of moving air masses. As he banks and turns through what appears to your eyes as empty sky, you begin to notice that certain areas feel different beneath your wings. Subtle pressure changes, microscopic alterations in air temperature, tiny variations in humidity that your developing senses are only beginning to detect. The lesson begins with your father leading you toward a section of sky that looks identical to every other section, but feels subtly different as you follow his flight path. His wing positions provide continuous instruction the way he holds his primaries slightly separated to increase lift efficiency, the angle at which he banks to maintain position within the thermal core, the minute adjustments of tail and wing that keep him centered in the rising column of air. Your first successful thermal encounter comes not as dramatic revelation but as gradual realization. Following your father's example, you extend your wings to maximum span and reduce your wing beat frequency to nearly zero. For several seconds, nothing changes. You maintain altitude through residual momentum while your speed bleeds away towards stall. Then, almost imperceptibly, you notice that your descent rate has decreased. The air beneath your wings feels denser, more supportive, infused with upward energy you cannot see but can definitely feel. The thermal's core reveals itself slowly as you learn to center yourself within the invisible column. Small adjustments of bank angle and wing position produce noticeable changes in lift, teaching you to navigate within the three-dimensional architecture of rising air. Too far to one side and you slip out of the thermal entirely, requiring immediate wing beats to prevent an uncontrolled descent. Too far forward or back, and you encounter downdrafts that cancel the thermal's lifting power. Your mother joins the lesson by demonstrating advanced thermal techniques that make her appear to levitate without effort. She positions herself at what you gradually realize is the thermal's strongest core, her body motionless except for minute feather adjustments that keep her perfectly centered in the rising air. Her spiral pattern widens and tightens based on the thermal's characteristics, teaching you that these invisible towers of lift have shape, structure, boundaries that skilled flyers learn to read and exploit. The altitude gained through thermal soaring transforms your understanding of the landscape below. Heights that required exhausting wing beat climbs now come as gifts from the warming earth. Thermals lifting you hundreds of feet with no more effort than holding your wings steady and making small corrections to stay centered in the rising air. From these elevated perspectives, patterns in the terrain below begin to make sense in terms of thermal generation and atmospheric behavior. Ridgelines running perpendicular to prevailing winds create predictable lift bands that your parents show you how to exploit for long-distance soaring. Valley floors, heated by morning sun, send up thermal columns that rise like invisible chimneys to altitudes where the air grows thin and cold. Dark rock faces and clearings in the forest below act as thermal generators, their sun-warmed surfaces creating the temperature differentials that drive the atmospheric engine of soaring flight. Your siblings develop thermal skills at different rates, each finding personal approaches to this fundamental aerial ability. Your sister, with her slightly larger wing area, proves adept at finding weak thermals and maximizing their lifting potential through patient, efficient circling. Your smallest sibling discovers that his lighter weight allows him to exploit thermals too weak to support larger eagles, giving him access to lift sources others might miss entirely. The patience required for thermal soaring challenges every instinct developed during your ground-bound youth. Where nest life rewarded quick responses and immediate action, thermal flying demands stillness, waiting, the ability to sense subtle changes in air pressure and temperature while maintaining perfect position within invisible columns of rising air. Minutes pass with your wings motionless, your body suspended in space through partnership with atmospheric forces rather than personal effort. Your first cross-country thermal flight begins accidentally when a particularly strong thermal carries you far higher than you intended to climb. From an altitude where your home cliff becomes just one feature among many, the world spreads out in directions you have never explored. Other mountain ranges become visible beyond the familiar territory of your youth, their peaks and valleys holding promises of different thermal patterns, alternative soaring opportunities, territories that skilled flyers might explore with no more effort than reading the invisible map of rising air. The descent from maximum altitude provides lessons in energy management that transform your understanding of efficient flight. Rather than diving steeply toward a distant destination, your parents demonstrate how altitude can be converted into distance through carefully managed glides that minimize altitude loss while maximizing forward progress. Each thermal encounter during the glide offers opportunities to top off your altitude account, maintaining your elevated perspective while covering vast distances. Thermal streets lines of thermals that form along predictable atmospheric boundaries become highways for long-distance soaring that your parents use for efficient territory coverage and extended hunting expeditions. These invisible roads through the sky follow ridgelines, valley systems, and thermal-generating terrain features, creating navigation routes that experienced eagles can follow for hundreds of miles with minimal energy expenditure. Your developing ability to read thermal indicators on the ground below transforms the landscape into a three-dimensional map of soaring opportunities. Certain cloud formations mark the tops of active thermal columns, their shadows on the ground indicating thermal sources that might already be weakening. Dust devils and visible heat shimmer provide direct evidence of thermal activity, while bird behavior other soaring species circling in tight spirals marks active thermals with aerial signposts. The social aspects of thermal soaring become apparent as you encounter other eagles exploiting the same atmospheric resources your family uses. Multiple birds sharing a single thermal create complex aerial choreography, each maintaining safe separation while maximizing their personal gain from the shared lift source. These encounters teach lessons in aerial etiquette, cooperation, and the reality that the sky's resources, while abundant, are not unlimited. Weather patterns begin to make sense in terms of thermal production as you learn to read atmospheric conditions that favor soaring flight. High-pressure systems with clear skies and light winds create ideal thermal weather, while overcast conditions and strong surface winds disrupt thermal formation and make soaring difficult or impossible. Your parents time their longest flights to coincide with peak thermal activity, usually during the warmest hours of clear, stable days. The transition from morning's weak, broken thermals to midday's strong, well-developed columns follows predictable patterns that experienced soarers learn to anticipate. Early thermals are often narrow and short-lived, requiring precise positioning and quick reactions to exploit effectively. Afternoon thermals grow broader and more powerful, but also more turbulent, demanding different techniques for safe and efficient utilization. Your wing loading, the relationship between your body weight and wing area, affects your thermal performance in ways that become apparent only through extended practice. Lighter birds can exploit weaker thermals and climb more efficiently in marginal conditions, while heavier eagles require stronger thermals but can penetrate turbulence more effectively once established in solid lift. These physical realities shape individual soaring styles and preferred thermal conditions. The art of leaving one thermal to search for the next requires judgment that comes only through experience and occasional failures. Thermaling to excessive altitude wastes time and energy, while leaving thermals too early results in forced landings or exhausting climbs to regain lost altitude. The optimal balance between thermal exploitation and cross-country progress becomes intuitive only after countless flights that test the boundaries of conservative and aggressive soaring decisions. Your first successful thermal-to-thermal cross-country flight covers territory that would have required days of ground travel, accomplished in less than an hour of efficient soaring. The route takes you over valleys and ridges you have observed only from your natal cliff, revealing new perspectives on familiar landmarks while opening entire new regions to future exploration. The return journey, following a different thermal highway, demonstrates that multiple soaring routes exist between any 2 points for pilots skilled enough to read the atmospheric map. Evening thermal conditions provide their own lessons as cooling Earth surfaces reduce thermal strength and reliability. Late-day soaring requires more conservative decision-making, shorter flights between guaranteed landing sites, and greater respect for the atmospheric forces that make effortless flight possible. Your parents use these marginal conditions to teach judgment, safety, and the humility that keeps skilled pilots alive through changing weather conditions. The mastery you develop through weeks of thermal practice transforms not just your flying ability, but your entire relationship with the mountain environment. Weather becomes personal, immediate, relevant to your daily plans in ways that ground-dwelling creatures never experience. Atmospheric pressure changes affect your energy levels and flight performance. Wind patterns determine your route options and soaring strategies. Cloud formations provide advance warning of thermal conditions hours before they affect surface weather. The first hunt. Your hunger this morning carries a different quality than the familiar emptiness that has always summoned parental feeding sessions. This is not the passive, waiting for regurgitated fish delivered with gentle precision to your gaping bill, but something more urgent, more personal, an awakening predatory instinct that makes your talons flex involuntarily and your eyes track movement with newly sharpened focus. Your parents have been withholding food for nearly 2 days now, not from cruelty but from ancient wisdom that knows when fledglings must transition from recipients to providers. The meadow spreads below your circling flight like a living carpet, its surface rippling with movements that your developing hunting vision begins to separate into categories: wind through grass, shadow patterns, and the quick darting motions that indicate prey. Your eyesight, which has been sharpening steadily since fledging, now reveals details at distances that would challenge human comprehension. Individual grass blades stand distinct at altitudes where the ground appeared as uniform green texture just weeks ago. Your father accompanies you on this hunt, but maintains careful distance. His role shifted from provider to instructor. His flight pattern demonstrates hunting techniques through example rather than direct intervention, the altitude selection that optimizes visibility while maintaining striking distance, the circling patterns that allow systematic scanning of potential hunting grounds, the subtle changes in wing position that indicate transition from soaring to hunting mode. A flash of brown movement catches your attention in the northwestern quadrant of the meadow, distinguishable from wind-stirred vegetation by its irregular timing and purposeful direction. Your focus narrows automatically, filtering out all peripheral stimuli as your predatory programming engages for the first time under operational conditions. The creature below a vole, though you lack names for your prey, moves in short bursts between concealing grass clumps. Its survival strategy perfectly adapted to avoid detection by ground predators, but less effective against aerial hunters. Your first hunting stoop begins almost involuntarily, your body responding to instincts deeper than conscious thought. You fold your wings partially, allowing gravity to accelerate your descent while maintaining enough control surface to adjust your trajectory. The sensation is intoxicating, pure speed building without effort, the ground rushing upward with mathematical precision, wind streaming past your body with forces that threaten to tear away your concentration. The vole's movements become increasingly frantic as your shadow passes over its position, the tiny mammal's own predator detection systems finally recognizing the aerial threat. It zigzags through the grass with desperate energy, seeking the underground burrows that represent safety from your approach. But your angle of attack and closure rate leave little room for escape, your descent trajectory intersecting its position with the inevitability of physics. Your talons extend forward as the final seconds of the stoop compress into slow-motion intensity. Every feather responds automatically to maintain flight stability during the high-speed approach, your tail fanning to provide precise steering control, your primary feathers making microscopic adjustments to keep your strike vector aligned with the moving target. The vole's exact position becomes the entire focus of your existence: distance, speed, and angle, resolving into the singular moment of contact. The impact sends shockwaves through your entire body as your talons close around warm fur and struggling muscle. Your momentum carries both predator and prey forward in a tumbling roll across the meadow grass, but your grip remains secure, your feet automatically adjusting to maintain their hold despite the confusion of the crash landing. The vole's struggles gradually weaken as your talons apply pressure with instinctive precision, though the process takes longer than you expected and requires more strength than you initially applied. Your first kill weighs almost nothing in your talons, yet its significance transforms your understanding of what you are. The warm body represents not just food but proof of capability, evidence that your developing skills can sustain independent existence. The transition from nest-bound nestling to effective predator has been completed in this single successful hunt, though you sense this is merely the beginning of a learning process that will continue throughout your life. The consumption of your prey follows rituals programmed into your genetic memory, but never before enacted. You position the vole carefully, using your beak to probe for the optimal feeding angle, while your talons maintain their grip on the small body. The first taste of fresh meat, still warm from life, triggers cascades of satisfaction that processed fish delivered by parents never provided. This food carries flavors of the meadow itself: grass seeds and wildflowers filtered through herbivore digestion, mineral traces from soil the vole excavated, the metallic essence of fresh blood. Your feeding technique develops through trial and adjustment, as you learn to manipulate prey with beak and talon coordination. The vole's fur must be worked around rather than consumed. Its small bones require careful navigation to avoid indigestible fragments. Its organs provide concentrated nutrition that your body craves after days of involuntary fasting. Each bite teaches lessons about prey anatomy, feeding efficiency, and the respectful consumption that honors the life taken to sustain your own. Your father's approval comes not through dramatic displays but through subtle behavioral changes that indicate satisfaction with your performance. His hunting demonstrations become more advanced, incorporating techniques for larger prey, multiple target scenarios, and adverse weather conditions. His territorial flights include you more frequently, recognizing your transition from dependent offspring to functional family member, capable of contributing to territorial defense and resource acquisition. The afternoon brings additional hunting opportunities as your confidence builds and your technique refinishes through repetition. A second vole falls to an improved stoop that incorporates lessons learned from your initial attempt: better altitude selection for optimal approach angle, more precise trajectory planning that accounts for prey evasion patterns, more efficient talon deployment that ensures secure grips on impact. Your hunting vision continues developing throughout the day as you learn to differentiate between various movement signatures in the grassland below. Wind patterns create predictable grass movements that your brain learns to filter out as background noise. Insect activity produces different motion characteristics than small mammal movement, requiring no hunting response despite being easily visible from altitude. Bird movements in the grass trigger different predatory calculations based on size, speed, and potential difficulty of capture. The energy economics of hunting become apparent as you balance the calories expended in multiple hunting flights against the nutritional value of small prey successfully captured. Each stoop requires significant energy expenditure in the form of altitude lost and muscle effort applied during the high-speed approach. Missed strikes represent total energy loss with no nutritional compensation, making hunting accuracy crucial for long-term survival rather than merely satisfying for immediate pride. Your siblings' hunting progress follows different timelines based on individual development rates and personal approaches to predatory behavior. Your sister's larger size allows her to target slightly bigger prey, but may make the precise control required for small target acquisition more challenging. Your smallest sibling compensates for reduced power with improved accuracy, his lighter weight allowing more precise maneuvering during approach phases. The social dynamics of family hunting expeditions evolve as multiple eagles work the same territory without interfering with each other's opportunities. Spacing becomes crucial, sufficient separation to avoid competition for the same prey items, yet close enough for mutual support if dangerous situations develop. Your parents demonstrate these protocols through their positioning during your hunting attempts, maintaining overwatch positions that allow intervention if needed while avoiding interference with your learning process. Weather conditions affect hunting success in ways that become apparent only through experience with various atmospheric states. Light winds allow the most precise approach control and easiest prey detection, while strong winds complicate both target acquisition and flight precision during the critical final seconds of each hunting stoop. Overcast conditions reduce thermal generation but sometimes concentrate prey activity in ways that make hunting more productive despite challenging soaring conditions. The ethical dimension of predation emerges through your parents' example rather than explicit instruction. Unnecessary killing is avoided. Hunting continues only while hunger persists, never for sport or excess. Wounded prey receives efficient dispatch rather than prolonged suffering. Failed hunts are abandoned cleanly rather than pursued beyond reasonable energy expenditure. These behaviors demonstrate respect for prey species and sustainable hunting practices that maintain ecosystem balance. Your hunting territory expands as your flight capabilities improve, and your familiarity with productive areas grows through successful experience. Different meadows provide varying prey densities and species compositions, requiring tactical adjustments to optimize hunting efficiency. Ridgetop clearings offer excellent visibility but limited prey diversity, while valley-bottom grasslands support higher rodent populations but complicate approach planning due to surrounding tree cover. The transition from opportunistic hunting to strategic prey selection marks a significant advancement in your predatory development. Rather than attempting to capture any moving target, you begin evaluating potential prey based on size, accessibility, energy cost of capture, and probable success rates. This calculated approach increases hunting efficiency while reducing the physical demands of unsuccessful pursuit attempts. Your first successful hunt of larger prey, a ground squirrel whose size approaches the limits of your current capabilities, requires techniques significantly more complex than vole capture. The approach must be more carefully planned to account for the squirrel's superior speed and alertness. The strike itself demands greater precision and power to secure prey capable of inflicting defensive wounds. The consumption process takes longer and requires more sophisticated manipulation of a meal substantial enough to provide nutrition for entire days. Evening hunting presents unique challenges and opportunities as crepuscular prey species become active while diurnal animals seek shelter. Your vision adapts to lower light conditions, though not to the extent that will develop with full maturity. Prey behavior changes as animals transition from daytime to nighttime activity patterns, creating brief windows of opportunity for hunters capable of exploiting these behavioral shifts. The satisfaction that follows successful hunting extends beyond simple nutrition to encompass proof of competence, evidence of successful development, and the deep fulfillment that comes from using abilities exactly as evolution designed them. Your body processes fresh prey with efficiency that processed food never achieved, your strength and endurance improve noticeably, and your confidence in independent survival grows with each successful capture. Your parents' pride in your hunting development expresses itself through increased inclusion in territorial activities, more complex flight training scenarios, and the gradual reduction of direct supervision during your hunting expeditions. Their transformation from providers to advisors marks your own transition from dependent nestling to capable juvenile, though full independence remains months in the future and will require mastery of skills you have barely begun to develop. Storm winds, shelter. The pressure change hits your sensitive inner ear like a physical blow, though the sky above appears deceptively calm in the early morning light. Your body responds to atmospheric conditions. Your eyes cannot yet detect a restlessness that makes perching uncomfortable, an urge to seek shelter despite clear blue horizons, an ancient awareness that weather patterns are shifting in ways that will soon make flight dangerous or impossible. Your parents have already adjusted their behavior, choosing lower perches with more wind protection, positioning themselves with backs to the direction from which the storm will arrive. The clouds appear first as distant smudges on the northwestern horizon, so far away they seem irrelevant to your immediate flying plans. But your parents' increasing agitation suggests these distant formations carry significance beyond their apparent size and distance. Their hunting flights become shorter, their circling patterns tighter, their return to the eyrie more frequent as they monitor the approaching weather system with expertise earned through decades of mountain storms. Your flight training this morning takes on unusual urgency as your father demonstrates emergency landing procedures and shelter-seeking strategies that previous lessons have only touched upon lightly. His choice of practice sites emphasizes protected alcoves, overhanging rocks, and wind-shadowed cliff faces that could provide refuge during severe weather. Each demonstration includes approach techniques for landing in confined spaces under challenging wind conditions. The wind's character begins changing long before the storm clouds reach overhead, shifting from the predictable thermal-driven patterns of fair weather to more chaotic gusts that seem to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Your wings require constant adjustment to maintain stable flight, and thermal generation becomes erratic as temperature gradients fluctuate with increasing cloud cover. Soaring becomes less reliable, forcing more frequent use of powered flight to maintain altitude and position. The approaching storm front reveals its true magnitude as it draws nearer, towering cloud formations that climb far above your maximum flight altitude, dark bases that suggest precipitation already falling in areas still hidden beyond intervening ridges. Lightning flickers within the cloud mass, brief illuminations that hint at electrical forces powerful enough to destroy any creature unfortunate enough to encounter them at altitude. Your parents' calls take on notes of command that you have not heard since your earliest nestling days, sharp vocalizations that demand immediate attention and compliance. Their flight patterns become more directive, less educational, clearly intended to guide you and your siblings toward predetermined shelter sites before the weather deteriorates beyond safe flight conditions. The time for gradual learning has passed. Survival now depends on following their lead without question or delay. The first heavy gusts arrive as scouts for the main storm system, powerful downdrafts that slam into the cliff face and create turbulence patterns unlike anything your limited flying experience has encountered. Your wings feel inadequate to the task of maintaining controlled flight, as air currents shift directions faster than you can adjust your control surfaces. Each wing beat becomes a struggle against forces that seem determined to dash you against granite walls. Your destination becomes a shallow cave approximately 200 feet below your home eyrie, accessible only through a narrow opening protected by an overhanging rock formation. The approach requires precise flying skills under rapidly deteriorating conditions, threading through gusting crosswinds, while maintaining enough control to execute a landing in confined space with minimal margin for error. Your father demonstrates the approach twice before expecting you to attempt it yourself. The landing proves more challenging than any flight maneuver you have previously attempted. Wind shears create invisible traps that threaten to slam you into rock walls or carry you away from the shelter opening entirely. Your approach speed must be carefully calibrated too fast, and you cannot stop within the limited cave depth. Too slow and sudden gusts will destroy your control authority. The successful touchdown comes only after several aborted approaches that teach respect for the forces you are attempting to navigate. The cave interior offers blessed relief from the increasing wind chaos outside, though the confined space feels claustrophobic after weeks of unlimited aerial freedom. The rock walls drip with moisture from previous storms, and the floor consists of gravel and accumulated organic matter from decades of use by your family during severe weather events. This shelter has protected generations of eagles from mountain storms too violent for any creature to survive in the open. Your siblings arrive with varying degrees of difficulty, each struggling with the challenging approach conditions but ultimately achieving safe landings within the protective alcove. Your sister requires multiple attempts, her larger wingspan making navigation through the confined approach corridor particularly challenging. Your smallest sibling nearly overshoots the landing area entirely, saved only by last-second Talon deployment that allows him to scramble to safety despite an undignified crash landing. The storm's arrival transforms the outside world into chaos that validates every aspect of your parents' protective urgency. Rain arrives not as gentle droplets, but as horizontal sheets driven by winds that scream across the cliff faces with voices that drown out all other sound. Lightning illuminates the cave entrance in stroboscopic flashes that reveal precipitation so dense the air itself appears white with suspended water. Thunder follows the lightning with concussions that shake the mountain itself, pressure waves powerful enough to be felt as physical blows despite the cave's protection. The sound reverberates through the rock formations, creating echoes and harmonics that make conversation impossible, even if the wind noise allowed normal communication. You press closer to your family members, seeking comfort in physical contact, while the storm demonstrates forces beyond any living creature's ability to resist. The temperature drops dramatically as the storm system passes overhead, cold air masses replacing the warm conditions that had made morning flight comfortable and easy. Your feathers, still not fully mature in their insulating capacity, require careful management to prevent heat loss that could become dangerous during extended shelter periods. Your parents position themselves strategically to provide windbreaks and shared body heat for their offspring. Hours pass in the dim cave, while the storm rages outside with undiminished fury. Periodically, one of your parents ventures to the cave entrance to assess conditions, but each reconnaissance confirms that flight remains impossible and dangerous. The wind speeds exceed even adult eagles' ability to maintain controlled flight, and the visibility approaches zero in the driving precipitation. Patience becomes survival strategy, as comfortable as the warm cave may not be. The storm's sound signature changes throughout its passage, providing audio cues about the weather system's progress and intensity. The initial gusting winds give way to more sustained blow conditions as the front's main body arrives overhead. Rain intensity fluctuates from torrential downpours to brief lulls that allow glimpses of the devastation being wrought on the landscape below. Hail arrives with drumming impacts that echo through the cave like machine gun fire against stone. Your first experience with extended confinement teaches lessons about patience, resource conservation, and family cooperation under stress that no fair weather training could provide. Food becomes a carefully managed resource rather than an on-demand commodity, though your parents' hunting experience includes preparation for exactly these situations. Water drips from cave walls in sufficient quantity to meet hydration needs, and body heat shared among family members maintains adequate warmth despite the temperature drop. The psychological challenges of storm confinement affect each family member differently. Your restless energy, normally dissipated through extensive flight activity, builds to uncomfortable levels within the cave's confines. Your siblings display varying degrees of stress adaptation, from nervous preening to restless movement that accomplishes nothing but burns energy you cannot afford to waste. Your parents demonstrate the stoic patience that comes from experiencing dozens of similar storms throughout their lives. The storm's gradual passage reveals itself through subtle changes in sound intensity, wind direction, and the quality of light filtering through the cave entrance. The screaming winds slowly diminish to merely dangerous levels, then to strong gusts that still preclude safe flight but no longer threaten immediate destruction. The rain transitions from horizontal sheets to more traditional vertical precipitation that allows limited visibility beyond the shelter opening. Your father's first reconnaissance flight after the storm's passage demonstrates extreme caution, short forays that test wind conditions and assess flight safety before committing to longer exposure. His reports, delivered through subtle vocal signals and body language, gradually indicate improving conditions and eventual clearance for family emergence from the protective cave. The transition from shelter to open flight requires careful timing to avoid being caught in secondary weather that often follows major storm systems. The landscape revealed after the storm's passage shows evidence of the forces that necessitated your confinement. Fresh rockfall scars mark cliff faces where loosened stone succumbed to wind pressure and thermal stress. Vegetation displays the flattened patterns that indicate sustained winds beyond what most plant life can withstand. Stream channels run higher and muddier than normal, carrying debris from slopes stripped bare by wind and precipitation. Your emergence from the cave into post-storm conditions requires adjustment to changed atmospheric pressures, altered wind patterns, and the brilliant clarity that often follows major weather systems. The air feels washed and dense, thermodynamics reset by the storm's passage. Flying conditions gradually improve as pressure stabilizes and thermal generation resumes, though several hours pass before soaring becomes reliable enough for extended flight activities. Your appreciation for fair weather conditions increases dramatically after experiencing nature's violent side firsthand. Normal wind patterns feel gentle and predictable after surviving storm-force gusts that challenged your parents' superior flying skills. Routine thermal generation seems luxurious compared to the complete absence of lift during severe weather passage. Even marginal flying conditions appear benign when measured against the impossibility of flight during major storms. The family's routine slowly normalizes as post-storm conditions stabilize and hunting opportunities resume. Your parents venture out on food-gathering expeditions that had been impossible during the storm's passage, though they remain more cautious about distance and duration until weather patterns return completely to normal. Nest maintenance becomes a priority as wind damage requires repairs to the stick and moss construction that serves as home base for all family activities. Your storm experience provides crucial education in meteorological awareness, emergency procedures, and the humility required for long-term survival in mountain environments where weather can transition from benign to deadly within hours. The memory of helplessness in the face of natural forces tempers your growing confidence in aerial abilities, teaching respect for atmospheric conditions that will serve you throughout your flying career. Rivers of fog. The pre-dawn darkness holds a quality of anticipation that penetrates your sleep and draws you toward wakefulness without external sound or movement. Your internal chronometer, calibrated by weeks of early morning thermal cycles and hunting expeditions, signals optimal conditions for a type of flight your parents have been preparing you to attempt. Through the Aries protective shelter, you sense rather than see the atmospheric conditions that create perfect fog-hunting weather high-pressure systems, clear skies, and the temperature differentials that generate the valley mists that will soon fill the lowlands like slow rivers. Your mother's departure precedes dawn by nearly an hour, her silent launch into star-filled darkness representing hunting techniques you have observed but never attempted. Her flight path follows memorized routes toward valley systems where fog generation occurs most predictably, territories mapped through decades of successful dawn patrols. The absence of her protective presence signals your readiness to attempt similar missions, though your inexperience demands more conservative approaches to this most challenging form of hunting. The fog's formation begins as isolated wisps rising from water surfaces and low-lying meadows, moisture-laden air cooling through radiative heat loss, until saturation creates visible vapor. These initial manifestations appear innocent, mere decorative elements in the landscape below, but your parents' increased activity indicates the beginning of hunting opportunities that exist nowhere else and at no other time. The fog represents both challenge and resource concealment that complicates prey detection while concentrating hunting grounds into predictable areas. Your first fog-hunting flight launches into air so still and clear that thermal generation remains hours in the future. Without rising air columns to provide effortless lift, every foot of altitude must be earned through determined wing beats that challenge your developing flight endurance. The sensation differs dramatically from normal morning flight snow, invisible elevators of warm air, no energy subsidies from atmospheric heating, just personal effort against gravity's constant demand. The valley floor disappears, gradually beneath expanding layers of mist that transform familiar landscape into something alien and mysterious. Meadows where you have successfully hunted ground squirrels and voles become invisible beneath white blankets that shift and flow with their own mysterious currents. Only the highest points boulder fields, ridge lines, isolated trees penetrate the fog layer like islands in a cottony sea. Your flight altitude positions you in the interface zone between clear air above and fog-shrouded terrain below, a transition region where visibility fluctuates dramatically within vertical distances of mere feet. Diving too deep into the mist eliminates visual reference and makes controlled flight nearly impossible. Staying too high removes access to the prey species that concentrate in fog-edge environments where temperature gradients create favorable feeding conditions. The hunting technique requires skills you have barely begun to develop: navigation by sound rather than sight, interpretation of subtle disturbances in fog patterns that indicate prey movement below, the ability to maintain flight reference while operating in visibility conditions that would challenge experienced pilots. Your parents demonstrate these skills through example, their calls providing audio beacons when visual contact becomes impossible in the shifting mist. Your first prey detection comes not through direct observation but through interpretation of fog disturbance patterns that indicate movement below the visible surface. A slight swirl in the mist, different from the random wind patterns that create constant atmospheric motion, suggests a fish rising to feed in the shallows of an invisible stream. The challenge lies in converting this indirect evidence into precise target location while maintaining flight safety in marginal visibility conditions. The attack approach must be planned differently than any hunting technique you have previously attempted. Normal visual tracking becomes impossible once you descend into the fog layer, requiring commitment to attack vectors based on sound, instinct, and faith in your ability to execute successful strikes on targets you cannot see until the final instant of contact. The margin for error disappears entirely. Miss your target, and you may find yourself flying blind through terrain that offers no safe landing options. Your talons break through the fog surface into a world transformed, where familiar valley floors become landscapes from dreams. The stream you targeted appears suddenly beneath your extended feet, its surface barely visible in the pearl-grey half-light that penetrates the mist layer. The fish you sense through fog disturbance materializes as a silver flash in dark water, requiring split-second adjustment of your strike angle to compensate for refraction effects that make underwater targets appear displaced from their actual positions. The successful capture sends shock waves of satisfaction through your entire body as your talons close around substantial prey taken under the most challenging conditions you have yet encountered. The fisher, large trout that represents more nutrition than several small mammals, struggles with surprising strength, requiring careful talon placement and secure grip to prevent escape during the climb back to clear air above the fog layer. Your ascent through the mist proves more challenging than the descent, the disorientation effects amplified by the need to maintain secure grip on struggling prey while navigating vertically through visibility approaching zero. Your wings work harder to generate climbing power, while your attention divides between flight safety and prey security, a multitasking challenge that pushes your developing skills to their current limits. Breaking through the fog's upper surface into brilliant morning sunlight feels like emerging from underwater, the sudden transition from grey half-light to full visibility, providing relief that makes you appreciate clear air in ways that fair-weather flying never taught. The fog layer spreads below like a white sea, concealing the hunting grounds where your success proves the value of skills your parents have been patiently teaching through demonstration and guided practice. Your siblings' attempts at fog hunting reveal individual approaches to this challenging technique based on personal strengths and developing specialties. Your sister's larger size provides power advantages for carrying substantial prey out of confined fog layer environments, while your smallest sibling's lighter weight allows more precise maneuvering in marginal visibility conditions. Each family member develops slightly different strategies for exploiting the same atmospheric phenomenon. The fog's evolution throughout the morning provides ongoing education in atmospheric dynamics and their effects on hunting opportunities. Early formation creates the thickest, most concealing conditions that challenge even experienced hunters while providing maximum prey security. Mid-morning persistence offers optimal hunting conditions as fog density decreases enough to allow limited visibility while maintaining sufficient concealment to concentrate prey activity. Solar heating gradually erases the fog through evaporation that transforms the hunting environment minute by minute. What begins as impenetrable white barriers slowly becomes patchy coverage, then isolated wisps, then clear air revealing landscape that has been hidden for hours. The transition period provides unique opportunities as disoriented prey becomes visible while still behaving according to fog hunting patterns. Your parents' expertise becomes most apparent during these transitional periods when their accumulated knowledge allows prediction of exactly where fog will persist longest, which valley systems will maintain huntable conditions after others have cleared, and how prey behavior changes as concealment disappears. Their flight patterns demonstrate efficiency that comes only through years of exploiting identical weather patterns. The energy economics of fog hunting prove more demanding than fair weather techniques. The additional effort required for navigation and prey acquisition in challenging conditions balanced against the typically larger and more nutritious prey species available during these atmospheric events. The calculation involves factors beyond simple caloric mathematics skill development, territory knowledge, and the confidence that comes from mastering difficult techniques. Your navigation skills develop rapidly through fog flying experience, as you learn to maintain geographic reference despite limited visibility. Familiar landmarks become audio cues rather than visual references, stream sounds and echo patterns off cliff faces providing positional information when sight fails. Wind direction and strength offer additional navigation data for pilots skilled enough to interpret atmospheric messages. The social dynamics of family fog hunting require coordination techniques different from fair weather cooperation. Audio communication becomes crucial when visual contact disappears, calls serving as position reports, navigation aids, and safety checks. Spacing intervals must be precisely maintained to avoid collisions while preserving mutual support capabilities when emergencies develop in visibility-limited conditions. Your first successful fog hunting expedition concludes with appreciation for atmospheric complexity that fair weather flying never reveals. Weather becomes personal, immediate, and crucial to daily survival rather than simply background conditions that affect thermal generation and flight comfort. The fog represents one of many specialized hunting environments that skilled eagles learn to exploit through patient practice and accumulated experience. The memory of silent flight through pearl gray mists, of prey taken from invisible streams, of navigation by sound and instinct rather than sight, adds depth to your growing understanding of what it means to be an aerial predator. Each specialized technique mastered expands your environmental range and survival options, building toward the complete skill set that will eventually support independent adult existence. Your parents' pride in your fog hunting success expresses itself through increased inclusion in challenging flight scenarios, more complex hunting expeditions, and gradual reduction of direct supervision during marginal weather operations. Their recognition of your developing competence marks another milestone in the transition from dependent offspring to capable juvenile, though full mastery of all specialized hunting techniques will require years of accumulated experience. Mountain updrafts. The granite spires rise from the valley floor like ancient monuments to geological time, their wind-carved faces creating vertical highways of moving air that experienced eagles have exploited for millennia. This morning, your father guides you toward these towers not for hunting or territory patrol, but for advanced lessons in high-altitude flight that will expand your understanding of atmospheric dynamics beyond anything your previous training has encompassed. The mountain updrafts that flow along these rocky giants provide access to altitudes where the air grows thin and cold, where perspectives expand beyond the familiar boundaries of your natal territory. Your flight begins at traditional altitudes where thermal generation provides familiar lift sources and comfortable air density supports normal wing loading requirements. But the mountains ahead demand different techniques, specialized skills for exploiting wind patterns that exist only where topography forces horizontal air movement into vertical channels. The transition from thermal soaring to ridge lift flying requires adjustments in technique, timing, and risk assessment that your developing judgment must learn to navigate safely. The approach to the first granite spire reveals wind patterns invisible to casual observation but clearly apparent to experienced mountain flyers. Air flowing across the valley strikes the vertical rock face and deflects upward in steady streams that create reliable lift bands along the cliff's windward edge. Unlike thermals, which rise in discrete columns and dissipate at predictable altitudes, ridge lift follows the mountain's contours and can extend far above the heights where thermal activity normally peaks. Your entry into the ridge lift system comes as a revelation in flight efficiency that transforms your understanding of atmospheric resources. Where thermal climbing requires circular patterns within confined lift cores, ridge flying allows straight-line ascent along predictable uplift bands that follow the mountain's vertical architecture. Your climb rate increases dramatically as the forced updrafts provide consistent lift without the intermittent cycles characteristic of thermal columns. The sensation of sustained upward movement without circling creates flight experiences unlike anything your previous training has provided. Your wings barely move as you ride the invisible escalator of forced lift, minute adjustments maintaining position within the uplift band, while the mountain itself provides all climbing energy. The landscape below shrinks steadily as your altitude increases beyond levels achievable through thermal generation alone. Your father's demonstration flight reveals advanced techniques for exploiting ridge lift systems that extend far beyond simple upward rides along cliff faces. He shows you how to transition between multiple lift bands as mountain features create complex wind patterns, how to use ridge lift for cross-country flights that cover vast distances while gaining altitude continuously, and how to recognize conditions where ridge flying becomes dangerous rather than beneficial. The air density changes become apparent as your altitude increases beyond your previous flight envelope, each breath requiring more effort to extract sufficient oxygen from the thinning atmosphere. Your wing loading calculations shift as reduced air density requires increased airspeed to maintain lift, though the ridge updrafts compensate for some of these high-altitude challenges through their consistent upward energy. The temperature drops steadily as you climb beyond the warming influence of sun-heated valley floors, the air growing crisp and clean with the sharp bite of high altitude. Your feathers fluff automatically to maintain body heat, their insulating capacity tested by conditions that ground-level experience never provided. The sensation of cold becomes part of the high-altitude flying experience, demanding energy management strategies different from low-altitude operations. Your vision adapts to the crystalline clarity that exists only at extreme altitudes where atmospheric moisture and particulates no longer filter incoming light. The world below appears with microscopic detail that reveals individual trees, buildings, and geographic features at distances that would render them invisible from lower altitudes. Rivers become silver threads winding through landscapes that extend beyond every horizon. The mountains around you take on different character when viewed from their own altitude rather than from below. Peaks that appeared massive and insurmountable from valley perspectives reveal themselves as accessible prominences in extended ranges that march toward infinity. Snowfields and glaciers become navigational landmarks rather than distant decorations, their white surfaces reflecting light with intensity that demands careful visual management. Your first approach to the thin air zone where most aircraft struggle to maintain performance teaches lessons in physiological adaptation that will serve you throughout your flying career. Your breathing rate increases automatically to compensate for reduced oxygen availability, your heart rate elevates to maintain circulation efficiency, and your energy management becomes more critical as physical reserves deplete more rapidly at altitude. The wind patterns at extreme altitudes follow different rules than the familiar thermal and ridge systems of lower flight levels. Jet stream effects become noticeable as high-altitude winds reach velocities that can either assist or oppose your flight path dramatically. Wind shear between different altitude layers creates turbulent zones that require careful navigation to avoid flight control problems. Your navigation skills must adapt to perspectives where familiar landmarks appear completely different or disappear entirely below the curve of the Earth's surface. Distance estimation becomes more challenging as atmospheric perspective effects diminish in the clear air, making far objects appear closer than their actual positions. Your internal mapping systems must incorporate three-dimensional references rather than the primarily horizontal navigation of low-altitude flight. The psychological effects of extreme altitude create sensations that your ground-based experience never anticipated. The vast emptiness below triggers primitive responses to exposure and vulnerability that must be managed through conscious effort. The silence at altitude, where most sound sources remain far below, creates an isolation both peaceful and slightly unsettling for social creatures accustomed to constant audio input. Your descent from maximum altitude provides education in energy management techniques that transform altitude into distance through carefully controlled glides. The potential energy stored in your elevated position converts to kinetic energy through precise airspeed management, allowing coverage of vast territories with minimal wing effort. The descent rate must be carefully controlled to avoid excessive speeds that could damage flight control surfaces or create dangerous flight attitudes. The return to normal altitudes feels like entering a different atmospheric realm where air density supports your wings more efficiently and oxygen levels restore normal breathing patterns. The familiar thermal activity of lower altitudes provides welcome lift sources after hours of depending entirely on ridge systems and gravitational energy for flight control. Your body appreciates the return to comfortable temperatures and pressure levels. Your siblings' experiences with high-altitude flying reveal individual responses to the challenges and opportunities of mountain updraft exploitation. Your sister's larger size provides advantages in the thin air, where wing loading becomes more critical, while your smallest sibling's lighter weight allows more efficient climbing in the reduced density atmosphere. Each family member develops personal techniques for managing the physiological demands of extreme altitude operations. The territory mapping that results from high-altitude flights expands your geographic knowledge exponentially as vast areas become visible simultaneously from elevated perspectives. Mountain ranges that required days of normal altitude flying to traverse appear as navigable landscapes that skilled pilots can cross efficiently using ridge lift systems. Your mental map of the region expands from local territory to regional geography, incorporating features hundreds of miles from your natal area. The weather prediction skills that develop through high-altitude flying improve your ability to anticipate atmospheric conditions hours or days in advance. Cloud formation patterns visible from extreme altitudes provide early warning of weather systems still below the horizon from ground-level perspectives. Wind patterns at various altitudes reveal atmospheric dynamics that affect surface weather through complex mechanisms. Your appreciation for the mountain environment deepens through intimate contact with geological features that most creatures never approach. The granite spires become familiar landmarks rather than distant decorations, their wind patterns mapped through personal experience rather than learned through observation. Each mountain face reveals individual characteristics that affect local atmospheric behavior in unique ways. The confidence that comes from mastering high-altitude flight techniques adds another dimension to your growing aerial competence. The ability to access extreme altitudes provides escape options during emergencies, navigation advantages during long-distance flights, and hunting opportunities in specialized environments where few predators can operate effectively. Your flight envelope expands vertically as well as horizontally, opening new possibilities for territory exploitation and survival strategies. Your parents' recognition of your high-altitude flying competence marks another milestone in your development toward independent adult existence. The skills required for safe mountain updraft exploitation demonstrate judgment, physical capability, and aerial awareness that approach adult standards. Their decreased supervision during challenging flights indicates growing confidence in your ability to handle complex atmospheric conditions without direct guidance. The memory of soaring through crystalline air among granite peaks, of perspectives that encompass territories beyond walking distance, of silence and solitude at altitudes where few living creatures venture, becomes part of your expanding understanding of what it means to inhabit the vertical dimension. Each specialized flying skill mastered adds to your capability portfolio, building toward the complete aerial competence that will support successful independent existence in one of nature's most demanding environments. Territory drawn in sky. High above the morning mist, where the air grows thin and the world below shrinks to a patchwork of greens and browns, an eagle begins the ancient ritual of claiming space. Not with fences or walls, not with the crude markers that ground-bound creatures might use, but with something far more elegant, the writing of invisible boundaries across the endless canvas of sky. The eagle rises on thermals that spiral upward like ghostly staircases, each wing beat deliberate, each movement part of a choreography older than memory. At 2,000 feet, 3,000, 4,000 until the earth becomes a map of itself, the great bird begins to trace the borders of its domain. These are not arbitrary lines drawn in momentary whim, but boundaries as real and respected as any human treaty, written in the language of wind and witnessed by clouds. The territory unfolds in sweeping arcs and graceful loops, each curve marking the edge of a hunting ground that might span 30 square miles of mountain, valley, and rushing river. The eagle's flight path becomes a slow, methodical signature across the morning sky, visible to any who know how to read such ancient script. Other eagles, distant specks against the horizon, watch this aerial calligraphy with the attention of scholars studying sacred text. From the west comes a challenger, another golden eagle, perhaps a younger bird testing the strength of established boundaries, or an older one whose own territory has been compromised by the encroachment of human development below. The two birds circle each other at a respectful distance, their calls carrying across the thin air like questions posed in a forgotten tongue. These are not the harsh screams of battle, but something more subtle inquiries about intention, assertions of presence, negotiations conducted in the universal language of flight. The territorial eagle climbs higher, demonstrating not aggression but authority, showing mastery of the vertical realm that separates earth from heaven. At 5,000 feet, the air is so clear that individual trees below become mere brushstrokes on a vast canvas, and here, in this rarefied space, the dance of boundary making continues. The challenger responds by mirroring these movements, but always at a distance, always acknowledging the invisible lines that separate one domain from another. There is no violence in this encounter, no fierce clash of talons or beating of wings. Instead, there is something far more sophisticated, a conversation conducted through aerial maneuvers, a diplomatic exchange written in the grammar of soaring flight. The established eagle performs a series of barrel rolls, its wings catching and releasing sunlight like signals flashed across the sky. The message is clear: this space is occupied, defended, and cherished. As the sun climbs higher, warming the air and creating stronger thermals, both birds ride these invisible elevators with the skill of master craftsmen. They know every pocket of rising air, every wind pattern that curves around mountain peaks and funnels through valleys. This knowledge is not learned but inherited, passed down through countless generations of eagles who have claimed and defended these same aerial highways. The territorial display continues for nearly an hour, a slow-motion dance of assertion and acknowledgement performed against the backdrop of an endless sky. The challenger, recognizing the strength and determination of the established bird, gradually extends its patrol to the eastern ridgeline, where perhaps unclaimed territory awaits, or where another eagle might be willing to negotiate new boundaries. Left alone again, the territorial eagle continues its patrol, but now with the relaxed confidence of authority reaffirmed. Each wing beat becomes a statement of ownership, each circling flight a renewal of ancient claims. The invisible borders have been redrawn, not in ink or paint, but in the more permanent medium of understanding, that mutual recognition among eagles that some spaces are sacred, some boundaries inviolate. As afternoon approaches and the thermals begin to weaken, the eagle completes one final circuit of its domain. From this height, the territory reveals itself as a perfect integration of mountain, forest, and rivera, complete ecosystem capable of supporting not just one eagle, but the eventual family that will depend on this carefully defended space. The rabbit warrens below, the fish-rich streams, the rocky outcroppings perfect for nesting gall of these resources lie within the invisible boundaries that have been so carefully maintained. The patrol ends as it began, with quiet authority rather than dramatic gesture. The eagle settles on a high perch, wings folding with the satisfaction of duty fulfilled, territory secured, and ancient protocols observed. In the fading light, other eagles can be seen in the distance, each maintaining their own invisible domains, each contributing to a complex network of aerial territories that has organized this landscape for thousands of years. Tomorrow will bring another patrol, another gentle but firm assertion of boundaries written in sky. The ritual will continue as it has since eagles first learned to soar, a testament to the possibility of claiming space without destroying it, of asserting ownership without denying the freedom of the very element wind and sky that makes such ownership possible. Courtship dance. In the golden hour before sunset, when the air holds the last warmth of the day and thermals rise like invisible pillars from the sun-heated earth, two eagles begin the most exquisite dance in all of nature. This is not the frantic mating display of smaller birds, not the brief and hurried coupling of creatures governed by mere instinct. This is something altogether more sublime: courtship that unfolds over weeks, sometimes months, conducted in the vast amphitheater of sky, with all the gravity and grace of an ancient ceremony. The male rises first, climbing steadily on broad wings that barely seem to move, each feather positioned with the precision of a master calligrapher's brush. At 1,000 feet, 2,000, 3,000, he continues his ascent until he becomes a dark speck against the deepening blue of evening sky. Only then does he begin the courtship proper, folding his wings and diving earthward in a controlled fall that speaks of absolute mastery over the forces of gravity and air. This is no reckless plummet, but a calculated display of aerial artistry. The male eagle carves a series of perfect loops through the air, each circle smaller than the last, spiraling downward in a display that transforms pure physics into poetry. His wings catch and release the golden light of sunset, creating flashes of brilliance that signal his presence to any who might be watching from the shadowed valleys below. From her perch, on a dead pine that has stood sentinel on this mountainside for perhaps a century, the female watches. She has been courted before eagles mate for life, but courtship is renewed each season, a yearly reaffirmation of bonds that may last decades. Her dark eyes track every movement of the male's aerial ballet, reading in his flight the story of his strength, his health, his worthiness as a partner in the great endeavor of raising young in this harsh and beautiful landscape. The male completes his diving display and climbs again, this time extending an invitation through the ancient language of flight. He positions himself just below the female's eye level, perhaps 50 yards away, and begins a series of graceful figure eights. Each loop is perfect, each turn calculated to display the snowy white of his tail feathers against the darker backdrop of his wings and body. He is showing her not just his flying skill, but his ability to provide for these same aerobatic abilities will serve him when hunting the rabbits and ground squirrels that will feed their future offspring. After long minutes of patient display, the female launches herself from her perch. Her takeoff is unhurried, deliberate, the movement of a creature who has never doubted her mastery of the air. She rises to match the male's altitude, and now the true courtship begins, a synchronized dance performed by two birds who together weigh less than 20 pounds but command the entire sky as their stage. They begin with parallel flight, matching each other wing beat for wing beat, their bodies separated by perhaps 10 feet of empty air but connected by invisible threads of mutual awareness. Every adjustment the male makes to catch a thermal, the female mirrors. Every bank and turn becomes a conversation conducted without words, a negotiation of compatibility performed in 3 dimensions. The dance grows more intimate as trust builds between the pair. They begin to fly closer together, their wingtips nearly touching, their movements so synchronized that they seem like 2 parts of a single organism. The male demonstrates his agility with a series of barrel rolls, spinning around his own axis while maintaining perfect formation with his partner. The female responds with her own display of precision flying, carving sharp turns that show her ability to maneuver in tight spaces, a skill essential for any eagle who must hunt in the maze of branches and rocky outcroppings that characterize their mountain home. Then comes the moment that defines eagle courtship, the talon clasp. With infinite care, the male extends his feet until his razor-sharp talons just touch those of the female. It is a gesture that requires absolute trust, for these same weapons that can crush the spine of a rabbit could easily injure either bird if the timing is imperfect. But eagles who have courted successfully know the precise pressure, the exact angle, the perfect moment when talon can meet talon, in an embrace that is both tender and powerful. Locked together, the pair begins to spin. What starts as a slow rotation gradually accelerates until they are cartwheeling through the air, their combined weight creating a momentum that carries them earthward in a controlled descent that defies every instinct for self-preservation. They spin faster and faster, the landscape below becoming a blurred tapestry of green and brown, their bodies creating a single silhouette against the evening sky. This is the ultimate test of trust. Two powerful predators, allowing themselves to fall together, their lives literally in each other's talons. The centrifugal force of their spin creates pressures that test the strength of their grip, the steadiness of their nerve, the depth of their commitment to this ancient ritual. Still, they hold on. spinning through 1,000 feet of empty air, falling together toward the earth that rushes up to meet them. Only at the last possible moment do they release, wings spreading in perfect unison to catch the air and arrest their fall. They pull out of the dive mere hundreds of feet above the treetops, their wingtips brushing the highest branches as they soar away in opposite directions. The separation is as choreographed as everything that came before, a gentle parting that speaks not of abandonment but of anticipation. They will repeat this dance many times over the coming weeks, each performance building on the last, each aerial ballet strengthening bonds that must endure through the long months of nesting, the demanding weeks of raising young, the challenges of another winter spent together on this unforgiving mountain. In a world where partnerships are often brief and commitment fleeting, eagles mate for life, and their courtship dances are the foundation upon which decades of shared experience will be built. As full darkness settles over the mountain and the first stars appear in the clear sky above, both eagles return to their separate roosts. Tomorrow will bring another opportunity for courtship, another chance to write their devotion across the endless canvas of sky. The dance will continue until the female judges her partner worthy, until trust becomes unshakable, until two solitary hunters become something more powerful than either could be. A lone mated pair ready to face whatever challenges the turning seasons might bring. Building the eyrie. When the snows of winter finally retreat from the high places and the first green shoots of spring push through the softening earth, the eagles begin their most important construction project. Not for them the hurried nest building of songbirds or the simple scrapes of ground-dwelling fowl. The eyrie they will create must be fortress, nursery, and observatory combinata structure capable of withstanding mountain storms, protecting fragile eggs, and serving as a launching platform for hunting flights across territory that stretches to every horizon. The selection of the site is itself a meditation on permanence and protection. For weeks, the mated pair scouts potential locations, visiting and revisiting cliff faces and ancient trees with the thoroughness of architects examining blueprints. The chosen spot must satisfy dozens of criteria, most of them written in the genetic memory of countless eagle generations. The location must be high enough to command views of the entire territory, yet sheltered enough to protect against the fierce winds that rake exposed ridgelines. It must be accessible to the adult birds but impossible for ground-based predators to reach. Most importantly, it must be solid enough to support a structure that will grow larger each year, for eagles return to the same nest season after season, adding new materials until some eyries become massive constructions weighing several tons. This year's choice falls upon a ledge of granite that juts from a cliff face like a natural balcony, some 800 feet above the valley floor. The rock itself has been shaped by millennia of weather into a formation that seems designed for precisely this purpose: a broad shelf protected by an overhang of stone, with commanding views south across the river valley and north toward the high peaks where thermal currents will provide easy access to hunting grounds. Previous eagles have nested here before. The white stains of generations paint the rock face below, and scattered among the loose stones are the bleached fragments of old construction twigs weathered to silver, bits of fur and feather from long-ago meals. The male begins the construction with the methodical patience of a master craftsman. His first flights are dedicated to gathering the foundation materials: sturdy branches as thick as a human forearm, pieces of driftwood carried up from the river below, even the occasional human artifact scavenged from campsites or abandoned cabins. Each piece is tested for weight and flexibility before being transported to the nest site, carried in talons strong enough to crack bones, but capable of handling these building materials with surprising delicacy. The architecture of an eagle's nest follows principles both ancient and practical. The foundation must be broad and strong, a platform capable of supporting not just the weight of two adult eagles but the eventual addition of eggs, growing eaglets, and the accumulated debris of a summer's hunting. The male lays each branch with consideration, weaving larger pieces together to create a matrix that will hold firm against mountain winds that can exceed 60 miles per hour. The female participates in every aspect of the construction, but her role shifts depending on the phase of building. During the early foundation work, she serves as both inspector and gatherer, testing the male's work with her own weight, adjusting the placement of branches, and contributing her own materials to the growing structure. Her standards are exacting. This nest must protect the most precious cargo imaginable, and no detail can be left to chance. As the basic platform takes shape, the work becomes more refined. The outer walls rise in a rough circle, created from progressively smaller branches woven together with the skill of master basket makers. The eagles seem to understand principles of engineering that human architects discovered only recently, the way that overlapping elements create strength greater than the sum of their parts. How proper drainage prevents water damage, why a slight depression in the center will keep eggs from rolling to the edges. The gathering of materials takes the eagles across their entire territory and beyond. They strip bark from certain trees, selecting only pieces with the right texture and flexibility. They collect moss from north-facing rocks where it grows thick and soft, perfect for lining the nest cup where eggs will eventually rest. Grasses are chosen for their length and durability, feathers collected not just from their own molting, but from other birds encountered during hunting flights. The work continues from dawn until dusk, broken only by the necessity of hunting and eating. Each eagle makes dozens of trips daily, their powerful wings carrying loads that would challenge birds half again their size. A single stick might require a flight of several miles if the right material isn't available nearby, and the eagles show remarkable selectivity, sometimes rejecting dozens of potential pieces before finding one that meets their exacting standards. As the nest nears completion, the focus shifts to the interior. The nest cup, the depression where eggs will be laid, and eaglets raised, receives the most careful attention. The female takes primary responsibility for this crucial phase, using her body to shape the hollow to exactly the right depth and dimensions. She spends hours settling into the cup, adjusting the position of twigs, adding soft materials until the contours perfectly accommodate her form. The final lining is composed of the finest materials the eagles can gather, downy feathers from their own bodies, soft grasses chosen for their texture, moss that will remain resilient even when wet. This carpet must cushion developing eggs, insulate growing chicks, and provide a clean environment that won't harbor parasites or disease. The female's instincts guide every choice, her movements becoming ritualistic as she arranges and rearranges the lining until it achieves some standard of perfection known only to her. The completed eyrie is a masterpiece of natural architecture, typically 6 to 8 feet across and 3 to 4 feet deep, weighing several hundred pounds even in its first year. The structure is perfectly integrated into its rocky setting, appearing almost to grow from the cliff face itself. From below, it's nearly invisible, camouflaged by its natural materials and the play of shadow across the granite. But from within, it offers panoramic views across the entire territory, a command post from which the eagles can monitor weather, track potential prey, and watch for any threats to their future offspring. The building process has taken nearly a month of intensive work, but it represents more than mere construction. Each stick placed, each piece of moss arranged, each adjustment to the nest cup's contours has strengthened the bond between the mated pair. They have worked as partners in the truest sense, their efforts coordinated toward a single goal that transcends individual survival. The eyrie they have created will shelter their eggs, protect their young, and serve as the center of their world for months to come. As evening falls on the day the nest is finally completed, both eagles settle onto their creation for the first time. The female tests the cup with her body, making final microscopic adjustments to the lining. The male perches on the rim, wings spread for balance, surveying their territory from this new vantage point. Tomorrow will bring new responsibilities, new challenges, but tonight they rest in the satisfaction of skilled work completed, a home prepared, and the future secured through the ancient craft of building something to last. Winter Vigil. When the first snows dust the high peaks and the aspen leaves below have turned to gold and fallen, when the streams run clear and cold and the last migrating birds have followed the sun southward, the eagle settles into the long patience of winter. This is not the active season of hunting and nesting, courtship and territory defense. This is the time of waiting, of conservation, of reading the subtle signs written across a landscape transformed by cold and snow. The eagle's chosen perch is a dead pine, lightning struck years ago but still standing firm. its bare branches offering unobstructed views across the valley, while its thick trunk provides shelter from the prevailing winds. From this vantage point, 800 feet above the river that now runs dark between ice-rimmed banks, the eagle can survey the entirety of its winter domain. The hunting territory has contracted with the season. Much of the high country is now locked under snow too deep for ground-dwelling prey, forcing both predator and prey to concentrate in the lower elevations where occasional south-facing slopes offer refuge from winter's grip. The eagle's metabolism has slowed with the shortening days, an adaptation refined over millennia of evolutionary pressure. Where summer demanded constant activity, hunting, nest building, raising young winter requires a different strategy entirely. The great bird can remain motionless for hours at a time, so still that a casual observer might mistake it for another dead branch on the skeletal tree. But this stillness is not sleep, it is active waiting, a state of alert conservation that allows the eagle to survive on perhaps a tenth of its summer caloric intake. Every hour of sunlight becomes precious now. When the sun crests the eastern ridgeline and begins its brief arc across the southern sky, the eagle shifts position to catch the warming rays on its dark feathers. The absorption of solar energy is not merely comfort, but survival strategy. Every degree of body heat gained from the sun is energy not spent from the reserves of fat accumulated during autumn's abundance. The eagle spreads its wings just enough to maximize surface area exposed to the warmth, each feather adjusted to capture and hold the precious heat. The hunting, when it comes, must be perfect. Summer allows for missed opportunities, for learning hunts that end in failure but cost little beyond effort. Winter forgives no mistakes. Each hunting flight burns calories that may take days to replace, so the eagle waits until conditions align, perfectly prey visible and vulnerable, wind favorable for silent approach, escape routes planned and alternatives considered. The patience required is almost beyond human comprehension, measured not in minutes or hours but in days of motionless observation. From the pine's highest branch, the eagle reads the winter landscape like a vast, slowly changing text. The snow tells stories written in tracks, the desperate wandering of deer seeking browse, the efficient patterns of fox and coyote following scent trails, the random stippling of mice and voles whose tunnels occasionally surface before diving back beneath the white cover. Each set of tracks represents potential opportunity, but also the eagle must calculate distance, energy expenditure, and probability of success before committing to any hunting attempt. The river below provides a lifeline through the harsh season. While smaller streams freeze solid, the main current runs too swift and deep for winter's grip to completely halt its flow. Here, waterfowl linger, mallards and mergansers, geese that have delayed their southern migration, diving ducks that can find food in the unfrozen depths. The eagle studies their patterns with the attention of a scholar, learning which birds feed when, where they rest, how they respond to approaching weather. A single waterfowl can provide enough calories to sustain the eagle for days, making the knowledge of their habits literally a matter of life and death. Weather becomes the eagle's constant companion and adversary. The bird can sense approaching storms hours before they arrive, reading atmospheric pressure changes in its bones, feeling the shift of air currents that precede mountain weather systems. When a storm approaches, the eagle must choose between riding it out on the exposed perch or seeking shelter in the limited caves and overhangs available on its territory. Each choice carries risk: exposure to wind and ice on one hand, vulnerability to ground predators, and loss of hunting opportunities on the other. The longest nights test the eagle's endurance most severely. 15 hours of darkness in the depths of winter, with temperatures that can drop to 20 below zero and winds that make the effective temperature far colder still. The eagle tucks its head beneath its wing, pulls one foot up into its warm belly feathers, and enters a state of semi-torpor that conserves energy while maintaining enough awareness to detect approaching danger. Its heart rate slows, its breathing becomes shallow, and its core temperature drops just enough to reduce metabolic demands without risking hypothermia. Dawn comes slowly in winter, preceded by a gradual graying of the sky that allows the eagle to begin assessing the new day's possibilities before full light arrives. If snow has fallen during the night, the hunting prospects change dramatically. Fresh snow may bury the tracks and runways that small mammals use, making them invisible but also concentrating them in predictable areas where wind has blown the surface clear. The eagle's dark eyes scan methodically across the white expanse, looking for the telltale disruptions in the snow's surface that might indicate prey moving beneath. On clear mornings when the temperature drops below zero, the eagle's breath creates small puffs of vapor that catch the early light like signals sent to the sky. Each exhalation represents precious body heat lost to the frigid air, another small cost in the careful accounting of winter survival. The bird adjusts its breathing to minimize these losses, taking deeper, less frequent breaths that maintain necessary oxygen levels while reducing heat expenditure. The social dynamics of summer dissolve in winter's harsh democracy. Territorial boundaries mean less when survival trumps all other considerations. The eagle may tolerate other raptorsauks, falcons, even other eagles sharing the same hunting grounds if prey is scarce enough. Competition exists, but it's muted by the understanding that winter kills indiscriminately and that cooperation, or at least non-interference, serves everyone's interests. As winter deepens and the days reach their shortest length, the eagle's vigil becomes almost meditative in its intensity. Hours pass with no movement beyond the occasional shift to maintain circulation or adjust position relative to the sun's warming rays. The great bird becomes part of the winter landscape itself, as constant and patient as the mountains that frame its territory. This is survival stripped to its essence, the ability to wait, to endure, to make each calorie count until the distant promise of spring begins to stir in lengthening daylight and the first tentative warmth of sun on south-facing slopes. Yet even in winter's grip, the eagle maintains its dignity, its presence, its quiet authority over this frozen domain. The vigil is not merely about survival, but about maintaining the continuity that connects this harsh season to the abundance that will return. In the eagle's patient waiting lies the promise that spring will indeed come again, that the cycle will continue, that life will persist through even winter's most severe trials. Spring feasts. The first warm breath of Chinook wind carries news that penetrates to the eagle's bones. Winter's grip is finally loosening. For months, the great bird has survived on patience and precision, making each hunting opportunity count, conserving energy through the long, dark nights when 20 below temperatures turned breath to ice crystals. But now the sun lingers longer each day, snow begins its retreat from south-facing slopes, and most importantly, the ice that has locked the rivers begins to crack and shift with the deep groaning sounds that herald spring's return. The eagle feels the change as much as sees it. Ancient instincts, coded in DNA older than these mountains, begin to stir with anticipation. The bird's metabolism starts to quicken from winter's deliberate slowness, preparing for the abundance that memory promises will soon transform this harsh landscape into a banquet hall. From its perch on the lightning-struck pine, the eagle's dark eyes scan the river below with new intensity, watching for the first signs of the miracle that has sustained its kind for countless generations. It begins as a distant sound, barely audible above the constant whisper of wind through pine needles, a deep, rhythmic splashing that grows stronger each day. The salmon are returning. After years in the ocean, growing fat on the Pacific's bounty, they have begun their ancestral journey upstream, driven by navigational abilities that put human technology to shame. They follow scent trails dissolved in water, magnetic signatures embedded in riverbed stones, and the genetic memory of spawning grounds that may have been used continuously for thousands of years. The first fish the eagle spots are Scout's large Chinook salmon, whose silver sides flash like mirrors as they leap the first of many obstacles between them and their spawning destiny. Each fish represents more protein than the eagle has seen in a single package since autumn's last hunt, enough calories to fuel the bird for a week or more. But these early arrivals are strong, alert, and few in number. The eagle watches and waits, knowing that patience now will be rewarded with abundance later. As the days lengthen and the snow melt swells the river's flow, the trickle of returning salmon becomes a stream, then a torrent of silver bodies pushing upstream with single-minded determination. The shallow riffles and gravel bars that were mere obstacles in winter become dining tables set with nature's finest cuisine, salmon that have survived ocean storms, predator attacks, and the grueling journey from salt water to fresh water now face their final challenger, running the gauntlet of every predator that has waited through winter for exactly this moment. The eagle's hunting strategy transforms with the changing conditions. No longer the careful, calculated stalks of winter, but a more dynamic approach that takes advantage of the salmon's predictable behavior. The great bird positions itself on overhanging branches where the river narrows, studying the water with the intensity of a master angler reading the stream. It learns which pools hold resting fish, which rapids force salmon to leap and become momentarily vulnerable, which shallow areas concentrate the run into easily targeted formations. The first successful strike comes on a morning when mist rises from the warming water and the sun angle creates perfect visibility into the depths below. A 30-pound Chinook salmon pauses in the lee of a boulder, gathering strength for the next upstream push. The eagle launches from its perch with wings spread wide, approaching the water at an angle that minimizes splash and maximizes the chances of a clean strike. Talons extended, eyes locked on target, the great bird commits to a dive that must be perfect. There will be no second chance with prey this powerful. The strike is over in seconds, but those seconds contain a lifetime of evolutionary refinement. Talons pierce the salmon's flesh just behind the head, in exactly the spot that provides maximum control while avoiding the powerful tail that could batter the eagle senseless. The fish's weight, nearly half that of the eagle, it stiffs every sinew and tendon as the bird struggles to lift its prize from the water. Wings beating furiously, the eagle gains just enough altitude to reach a nearby sandbar where the real work of feeding can begin. The abundance that follows is almost overwhelming after winter's scarcity. Day after day, the salmon run continues, offering hunting opportunities that require more stamina than skill. The eagle feeds until its crop bulges, then rests while digestion converts protein into the energy that will fuel spring's many demands. For the first time in months, the bird can afford to be wasteful, eating only the choicest parts of each fish and leaving the rest for the ravens, gulls, and countless other scavengers that have also learned to time their lives around the salmon's return. But the feast is about more than mere feeding. The eagle's body is preparing for the demands of the nesting season that lies ahead. The female, especially, must accumulate the resources needed to produce eggs, each one representing a massive investment of calcium, protein, and energy. The male, too, must build reserves, for soon he will bear primary responsibility for hunting, while his mate incubates their clutch, demanding that he provide not just for himself, but for the entire family. The riverbank becomes a complex ecosystem organized around the salmon run. Bears fish the deeper pools, their massive paws scooping fish from the water with surprising delicacy. Osprey dive from great heights, their specialized fishing adaptations allowing them to plunge completely underwater if necessary. Even smaller predators mink, otter, and marten take advantage of the abundance, while scavengers from ravens to insects clean up the remains that even the most efficient predators leave behind. The eagle learns to time its hunting to avoid conflicts with other predators while maximizing opportunities. Early morning, when mist still clings to the water and larger competitors are less active, often provides the best fishing. The great bird develops a routine hunt at dawn, feed until satisfied, then retreat to a high perch where it can digest in safety while monitoring the river for the next opportunity. As the salmon run reaches its peak, the river becomes a superhighway of silver bodies pushing upstream with desperate urgency. Fish that have already spawned, their life cycle complete, drift downstream as food for everything from eagles to aquatic insects. The water itself becomes enriched with nutrients from the ocean, carried inland by these living vessels and distributed throughout the watershed when predators and scavengers carry salmon carcasses far from the river's edge. The eagle's feeding becomes almost ritualistic in its precision. Each strike, each successful hunt, each meal consumed adds to the store of energy that will power the months ahead. The bird's feathers gain new luster from the protein-rich diet, its muscles develop the tone needed for the aerial displays of courtship season, and its eyes bright with the vitality that comes from abundance after scarcity. Yet even in the midst of plenty, the eagle maintains the wisdom learned through countless generations of boom and bust cycles. Some fish are cached in cool, shaded spots where they can be retrieved later if needed. The lessons of winter are not forgotten. Waste nothing, Take advantage of every opportunity, and remember that abundance is temporary, while hunger is always waiting just beyond the horizon. As the salmon run begins to wane and the last stragglers push upstream to their spawning grounds, the eagle has been transformed from the patient, energy-conserving survivor of winter into a creature of power and possibility. The spring feast has provided not just calories but renewal, not just sustenance but the foundation for all that lies ahead in the turning cycle of seasons. Raising eaglets. In the pre-dawn darkness of early spring, while frost still rims the edges of pine needles and the river runs cold with snowmelt from distant peaks, the female eagle settles into the nest cup she has so carefully prepared and begins the most delicate work of her life. The eggs beneath her, typically 2, sometimes 3, each one representing months of accumulated resources and evolutionary perfection, require not just warmth but precise temperature control, regular rotation, and protection from the mountain weather that can shift from gentle sunshine to howling blizzard in the space of an hour. The incubation period becomes a meditation in patience and precision. For 35 days, sometimes longer in the harsh conditions of high altitude, one or both of the adult eagles must maintain constant vigilance over their developing offspring. The female takes the primary responsibility, her broad body covering the eggs like a living blanket, her brood patch an area of bare skin rich with blood vessels in direct contact with the shells to provide optimal heat transfer. Every few hours, she rises carefully and uses her beak to rotate each egg, ensuring that the developing embryos receive even warmth and preventing them from adhering to the shell membranes. The male's role during incubation is no less crucial, though more visible from the outside world. He becomes the sole provider for the family, his hunting territory expanding to include the richest areas within flying distance of the nest. The salmon runs of spring provide abundant protein, but eagles require variety in their diet, especially when supporting the complex nutritional needs of developing eggs and growing chicks. His daily hunts range from waterfowl surprised on hidden ponds to rabbits caught in morning meadows, from carrion discovered on distant ridgelines to fish snatched from rivers swollen with snowmelt. The nest itself becomes a fortress of parental dedication. Built and rebuilt over multiple seasons, the massive structure now serves as nursery, weather shelter, and observation post combined. The thick walls of interwoven branches break the mountain winds that could chill developing eggs, while the carefully constructed cup cradles its precious cargo against temperature fluctuations that could prove fatal. The female's body heat, combined with the insulating properties of her specialized brood feathers, creates a microclimate within the nest that remains remarkably stable, despite the wild weather patterns common to mountain springs. When the first pip appears, a tiny hole in the shell made by the chick's egg, both parents become intensely focused on the hatching process. The sound of peeping from within the egg triggers parental behaviors refined over millions of years of evolution. The hatching process can take more than a day, requiring enormous effort from the developing chick as it gradually breaks free from the shell that has been both protection and prison for more than a month. The parents do not assist directly in the hatching. The chick must prove its viability by completing this first great challenge of life, but they provide encouragement through soft vocalizations and careful positioning to ensure the hatching occurs in the warmest, most protected part of the nest. The newly hatched eaglets are barely recognizable as future masters of the sky. Covered in grey down rather than feathers, their eyes sealed shut, their heads seemingly too large for their weak necks to support, they appear helpless beyond measure. Yet within hours of hatching, these tiny creatures demonstrate the fierce appetites that will drive their remarkable growth. An eaglet can double its body weight in the first week of life, fueled by the constant provision of food that now becomes the parent's primary occupation. The feeding process reveals the tender side of creatures often portrayed as fierce predators. The adults tear bite-sized pieces from their prey with surgical precision, removing bones, scales, and other indigestible materials before offering the prepared morsels to their offspring. The chicks respond to feeding with gaping mouths and urgent peeping, their entire bodies trembling with the effort of begging for food. In the early days, each chick may require feeding every hour during daylight, keeping both parents in constant motion between hunting forays and nest attendance. The brooding behavior continues well after hatching, as the young eagles cannot regulate their own body temperature for several weeks. The female maintains almost constant coverage of the chicks during their first 10 days of life, rising only when the male returns with food or when necessary adjustments to the nest require her attention. Her body becomes a living thermostat, responding to changing weather conditions by adjusting her position, fluffing or compressing her feathers, and even panting slightly during unexpectedly warm afternoons to prevent overheating the young beneath her. As the eaglets grow, their demands intensify rather than diminish. By 3 weeks of age, each chick consumes nearly a pound of food daily, their rapid growth requiring a constant supply of high-quality protein. The male's hunting expeditions become longer and more varied as he searches for prey sufficient to feed the growing family. Ground squirrels, marmots, young deer, waterfowl, fish, and even carrion all contribute to the eaglet's diet. The variety serves a purpose beyond mere calories-different prey. Animals provide different nutrients essential for proper feather development, bone growth, and neurological development. The nest becomes a classroom where survival skills are absorbed through observation and instinct. Long before they can fly, the eaglets begin exhibiting hunting behaviors, pouncing on sticks brought to the nest, grappling with each other in play fights that develop coordination and strength, and watching intently as their parents demonstrate the art of tearing prey into manageable pieces. Their eyes, which opened after the first week, develop the incredible acuity that will allow them to spot prey from miles away, tracking every movement their parents make with the attention of dedicated students. Sibling rivalry emerges as a natural part of the raising process, particularly when food becomes temporarily scarce. Eagles practice what biologists call facultative sibling aggression. The older or larger chick may dominate feeding opportunities, and in extreme cases, this can lead to the death of smaller siblings. Yet this harsh reality serves an evolutionary purpose, ensuring that at least one chick survives to carry on the genetic line even when environmental conditions cannot support the entire brood. In years of abundance, such as those blessed with exceptional salmon runs, multiple chicks often survive to fledging, creating the next generation of eagles to populate the territory. The development of flight feathers marks a crucial transition in the eaglets' lives. At about 5 weeks of age, the first true feathers begin to replace the grey down that has kept them warm since hatching. These feathers emerge in a carefully orchestrated sequence: flight feathers first, followed by contour feathers that will give them the sleek profile of adult eagles. The process is energy-intensive, requiring even more protein than their already substantial diet provides. Both parents now hunt almost continuously during daylight hours, their efforts focused entirely on supporting this critical phase of development. Wing strengthening exercises begin while the eaglets are still weeks away from their first flight. The young birds spend increasing amounts of time on the edge of the nest, flapping vigorously in the mountain winds that sweep across their clifftop home. These practice sessions develop the massive flight muscles that will eventually carry them across hundreds of miles of territory, while also improving their balance and coordination. The sight of young eagles exercising on the nest rim wings spread wide, tail fanned for balance, eyes bright with concentration, represents one of nature's most compelling demonstrations of instinctive preparation for life's greatest challenges. The fledging process, when it finally comes after 10 to 12 weeks in the nest, is both gradual and dramatic. The young eagles don't simply leap into flight, but rather engage in increasingly bold explorations of the area immediately around the nest. Short flights to nearby branches, awkward landings on rocky ledges, and tentative explorations of air currents all precede the moment when instinct overcomes caution and they commit to their first true flight across the void. Even after fledging, the family bond remains strong for months. The young eagles continue to depend on their parents for food while they develop hunting skills, learn territorial boundaries, and build the physical strength required for independent survival. This extended apprenticeship period, which can last through the end of summer and into early autumn, represents one of the longest parent-offspring relationships in the bird world. During these months, the eaglets transform from awkward, begging fledglings into competent hunters, capable of taking their own prey and eventually establishing territories of their own. The success of raising eaglets to independence represents the culmination of a full year's effort by the adult eagles. From the careful selection of nest sites, through the patient incubation period, from the intensive feeding of rapidly growing chicks, to the gradual teaching of hunting skills, every aspect of eagle parenting is calibrated to maximize the chances that their offspring will not merely survive, but thrive in one of nature's most demanding environments. The sight of a family of eagles soaring together over their mountain territory parents, and young riding the same thermals, hunting the same valleys, sharing the same boundless sky, represents success measured not just in survival, but in the continuation of ancient traditions that have shaped these mountains for thousands of years. Sky as storybook. From the eagle's aerial throne, positioned between earth and heaven at altitudes where the air grows thin and the curvature of the planet becomes almost perceptible, the landscape below unfolds as an ever-changing manuscript written in the languages of stone, water, and living green. Each day's flight reveals new chapters in an ancient story. Each season turns fresh pages in a narrative that has been unfolding since the mountains first rose from primordial seas and the first rivers carved their signatures into virgin stone. The eagle's perspective on time differs fundamentally from that of ground-bound creatures. Where humans measure change in seasons and years, the eagle perceives the deeper rhythms that govern this high country, the decades-long cycles of forest succession, the century-spanning erosion of rocky ridgelines, the millennial dance of glaciers advancing and retreating across the highest peaks. From 2,000 feet above the valley floor, with vision 8 times sharper than human sight, the great bird reads landscape history like a scholar, examining illuminated manuscripts. Spring's story begins with the retreat of snow, revealing the winter's damage and renewal in equal measure. Avalanche paths scar the mountainsides like pale scars against the dark timber, where tons of snow and ice have swept away everything in their path, clearing space for new growth and succession. The eagle's keen eyes track these disturbances, noting how quickly life reclaims the devastated areas first with hardy grasses and wildflowers, then with fast-growing aspen and birch, eventually returning to the climax forests of spruce and fir that characterize the high country. The rivers tell their own stories, visible from the eagle's vantage point, as silver threads weaving through valleys carved over millennia by their patient work. Spring snowmelt transforms these waterways from winter's subdued trickles into raging torrents that reshape their channels with each flood, cutting new oxbows, depositing gravel bars, and occasionally jumping their banks entirely to carve fresh paths through forests and meadows. The eagle watches these changes with the detachment of a chronicler, understanding that what appears destructive from a human perspective represents the normal pulse of landscape renewal. Summer brings the fullest expression of life's possibilities to the high country. From the eagle's aerial observatory, the mountains reveal themselves as a complex tapestry of interconnected ecosystems, each adapted to specific combinations of elevation, exposure, and moisture. Alpine meadows burst into brief, intense bloom above timberline, their wildflower displays visible as patches of color scattered across the mountainsides like paint dabbed on a vast canvas. Below the timberline, different forest types create distinct patterns: the dark green of spruce and fir on north-facing slopes, the lighter green of aspen groves that flash silver when wind stirs their leaves, the scattered individual trees of limber pine that mark the transition zones between forest and tundra. The eagle's daily hunting flights become reading expeditions across this living library. Each thermal that lifts the great bird higher provides new perspective on the intricate relationships that bind this ecosystem together. From sufficient altitude, the eagle can observe the movement patterns of large herbivore selk migrations that follow ancient pathways from winter valleys to summer ranges, deer concentrating in areas where forest fires have created browse, the seasonal dispersal of smaller mammals across habitat types that support their specialized needs. Weather patterns, too, become visible from the eagle's elevated perspective. The formation of afternoon thunderstorms over high peaks, the flow of air masses through mountain passes, the creation of local microclimates in protected valley soil of these phenomena reveal themselves to an observer positioned between earth and sky. The eagle learns to read these atmospheric stories not just for immediate hunting advantage, but as part of the larger narrative of how climate shapes landscape and landscape influences weather in endless feedback loops. Autumn transforms the story into one of preparation and gathering intensity. The deciduous trees that seemed merely green accent marks in summer's tapestry now reveal themselves as the starring players in a drama of color that sweeps across entire mountainsides. From the eagle's perspective, the progression of fall colors becomes a slow-motion wave, rolling down from the highest elevations toward the valleys first, the alpine willows turning gold above timberline, then the aspen groves creating bands of yellow that seem to glow with their own light, finally the scattered oak and maple adding splashes of red to the lower elevations. This color show serves purposes beyond mere beauty, representing the tree's strategic withdrawal of resources from leaves that cannot survive winter's harsh conditions. The eagle witnesses this annual retreat and concentration of life force, observing how each species has evolved its own timing and strategy for surviving the approaching dormant season. Some trees have already begun dropping their leaves by early autumn, while others hold their colors well into winter, each approach representing thousands of years of evolutionary experimentation with survival strategies. Winter's story, when it finally arrives, is written in stark black and white across a landscape transformed by snow and ice. The eagle's aerial perspective reveals how topography channels wind and weather into patterns that create vast differences in snow accumulation across relatively small areas. South-facing slopes may remain nearly bare, while north-facing valleys fill with snow depths measured in feet rather than inches. These patterns, visible as abstract art from the eagle's altitude, determine which areas will support wildlife through the harsh months and which will become virtual deserts until spring's return. The eagle's reading of this winter story includes subtle details invisible to ground-bound observers. The track patterns of mammals become clearly visible against the white background, telling stories of successful hunts, failed attempts at finding food, territorial boundaries maintained even in harsh conditions, and the constant struggle for survival that defines life in the high country. Even the patterns of wind-blown snow reveal landscape features and weather patterns, creating sculptural forms that speak of the fundamental forces shaping this mountain environment. Throughout all seasons, the eagle observes the slower stories written in geological time. Rock formations reveal the ancient history of this landscape, layers of sedimentary rock that speak of prehistoric seas, igneous intrusions that mark periods of volcanic activity, metamorphic zones where tremendous pressure and heat have transformed existing stone into new forms. Glacial moraines and carved valleys tell the story of ice ages, when glaciers thousands of feet thick scoured these mountains into their current form. From the eagle's perspective, human presence becomes just another chapter in this ongoing story, small clearings in ancient forests, thin ribbons of road following valley bottoms, occasional buildings that seem almost insignificant against the scale of mountain landscape. The eagle reads these human modifications with the same detached interest it brings to observing beaver dams or avalanche paths, recognizing them as another force shaping landscape evolution, while maintaining perspective on their relative significance in the longer story of geological time. The sky itself serves as both library and reading room for these landscape narratives. Cloud formations reveal wind patterns and approaching weather, while the changing quality of light throughout the day illuminates different aspects of the terrain below. Morning light emphasizes the vertical relief of mountain faces, while evening light brings out the horizontal patterns of geological stratification. The eagle's position between earth and sky provides the perfect vantage point for reading these stories written in stone and vegetation, water and wind, light and shadow across the vast manuscript of mountain landscape. Human shadows. In the early morning hours, when mist rises from the valley and the first thermal currents begin their invisible ascent toward peaks touched with alpenglow, the eagle's territory tells two overlapping stories. One is ancient, written in stone and shaped by glacier, carved by water, and painted with the seasonal rhythms of forest and meadow. The other is remarkably recent, measured in decades rather than millennia, marked by the geometric patterns and straight lines that betray the presence of that restless newcomer to these mountains, humanity. From the eagle's aerial perspective, the human footprint appears both significant and surprisingly small. Roads trace narrow ribbons through valleys that took millions of years to carve, their asphalt surfaces creating artificial rivers that channel a flow of metal and glass rather than water and stone. These transportation corridors represent humanity's primary penetration into the eagle's domain, bringing with them a constellation of changes that ripple outward from their edges like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The eagle has learned to navigate this altered landscape with the adaptability that has allowed its species to survive ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and countless other transformations of their mountain home. The great bird's daily hunting flights now include calculations that would have been unnecessary for its ancestors, the timing of human activity below, the noise patterns that might mask the approach of prey, the new vertical obstacles that have appeared in formerly clear flight paths. Power lines present the most immediate and visible danger, stringing thin cables across valleys and ridgelines like nearly invisible snares waiting to catch unwary wings. The eagle has developed an acute awareness of these artificial additions to its aerial highway system, learning to recognize the tall towers that support them and adjusting flight paths accordingly. Yet the lines themselves remain difficult to see, especially in poor light or adverse weather, creating a persistent hazard that claims some eagles despite their growing wariness. The expansion of human settlement into higher elevations has created a complex mosaic of opportunity and threat. Residential developments, even those designed to minimize environmental impact, bring with them domestic animals that can serve as both prey and predator. Small dogs and cats venture into terrain where they become vulnerable to eagle predation, while larger domestic animal sources, cattle, llamas represent potential threats to nesting sites and hunting areas. The eagle learns to distinguish between animals that pose danger and those that might provide opportunity, adding this knowledge to the vast catalogue of behavioral information that guides its daily decisions. Recreational human activity follows seasonal patterns that the eagle incorporates into its understanding of territorial dynamics. Winter brings skiers to slopes that were previously accessible only to the most dedicated human climbers, their bright clothing and mechanical noise creating disturbances that can affect wildlife behavior across wide areas. Spring and summer hiking activity concentrates along established trails and near water sources, creating predictable zones of human presence that the eagle can either avoid or exploit, depending on circumstances. The sounds of human activity create a new acoustic landscape that overlays the natural symphony of wind, water, and wildlife calls. Chainsaws mark the locations of logging operations, their harsh mechanical voices carrying for miles in the thin mountain air. Road traffic generates a constant low-frequency hum that rises and falls with the daily rhythms of human commuting patterns. Aircraft, both the scheduled flights that cross the mountains at high altitude and the smaller planes and helicopters that occasionally venture into the eagle's airspace, add intermittent but intense noise events that can disrupt hunting and nesting activities. Yet the eagle also discovers unexpected benefits in some aspects of human modification of the landscape. Road construction creates rock slides and disturbed areas where small mammals may become more numerous and visible. The carrion provided by vehicle strikes offers easily accessible meals, particularly during winter months when other food sources become scarce. Even the thermal updrafts created by paved surfaces and buildings can provide additional lift for soaring eagles, though the risks associated with flying near human infrastructure often outweigh these marginal benefits. The eagle's nesting behavior adapts to incorporate awareness of human activity patterns. Traditional nest sites near hiking trails or scenic viewpoints may be abandoned in favor of more remote locations, even if those sites are less optimal from a hunting or weather protection standpoint. The timing of nesting activities may shift to avoid peak periods of human recreation, with eagles beginning their breeding cycles earlier or later to minimize disturbance during the most vulnerable stages of egg incubation and chick rearing. Hunting strategies evolve to account for the altered behavior of prey species in human-modified landscapes. Deer and elk that once moved freely across open meadows now concentrate their feeding activities in early morning and evening hours, avoiding the midday periods when human recreational activity peaks. Small mammals adapt their surface activity patterns to avoid areas of heavy human traffic, forcing eagles to modify their hunting techniques and expand their search patterns to include more remote or difficult terrain. The eagle observes with detached interest the cyclic nature of human impact on the mountain environment. Logging operations clear large areas of forest, creating temporary openings that support different communities of plants and animals before succession gradually returns the areas to their original forest cover. Mining claims scar mountainsides with road cuts and equipment staging areas, but many of these industrial sites are eventually abandoned and slowly reclaimed by natural processes. Even permanent human settlements undergo constant change, with buildings constructed, modified, and sometimes demolished as human needs and economic conditions shift. Climate change, largely driven by human activities far from these mountains, manifests in ways that the eagle can observe but not fully comprehend. Tree lines creep slowly upward, as warming temperatures allow forests to establish themselves at elevations that were previously too harsh to support tree growth. Snowpack patterns shift, affecting the timing of snowmelt and the seasonal availability of water sources that support the complex web of life on which the eagle depends. These changes occur gradually enough that they don't disrupt the eagle's immediate survival, but they represent a shift in baseline conditions that will ultimately reshape the mountain ecosystem. The eagle's relationship with humanity remains fundamentally asymmetrical. While human activities profoundly affect the eagle's environment and behavior, the great bird's presence has minimal direct impact on human affairs. Most humans remain completely unaware of the eagle's daily passages overhead, its careful observations of their activities, or its constant adaptations to their modifications of the shared mountain landscape. This invisibility works to the eagle's advantage, allowing it to maintain its aerial domain, while avoiding the conflicts that might arise from more direct interaction. Conservation efforts, when they occur, represent humanity's attempt to maintain spaces where eagles and other wildlife can continue their ancient patterns of life, relatively undisturbed. The designation of wilderness areas, the protection of critical habitat, and the careful management of human recreational activities reflect a growing recognition that the mountain ecosystem requires refugia where natural processes can continue without constant human interference. The eagle benefits from these protections without understanding their artificial nature, experiencing them simply as areas where the familiar patterns of seasonal abundance and scarcity, predator and prey, continue to function according to rules older than any human presence in these mountains. Legends born on wings. In the thin air above timberline, where granite peaks pierce the sky like ancient monuments and the curvature of the earth becomes visible to eyes sharp enough to perceive it, the eagle carries more than just its own weight through the crystalline mountain atmosphere. Invisible but ever present, the great bird bears the accumulated weight of human imagination, thousands of years of stories, symbols, and spiritual significance that have transformed it from mere predator into something approaching the mythic. The eagle soars unaware of its symbolic burden, focused on the immediate realities of thermal navigation and prey detection that govern its daily existence. Yet, across cultures and continents, across millennia of human storytelling, its image has been pressed into service representing concepts as vast and varied as divine messenger, imperial power, spiritual transformation, and the unconquerable freedom of wild spaces. From its perspective high above the valley floor, these human projections seem as weightless as the air currents that lift its wings, yet their influence on its species' fate has been anything but insubstantial. Ancient civilizations looked skyward and saw in the eagle's effortless mastery of three-dimensional space a creature that moved freely between the realm of earthbound mortals and the distant domain of gods. Zeus, the chief deity of the Greek pantheon, chose the eagle as his personal messenger and symbol, recognizing in its aerial supremacy a fitting representation of divine authority over both heaven and earth. The great bird's ability to soar higher than any other creature, to appear and disappear at will among cloud-shrouded peaks, made it a natural choice for cultures seeking to understand the connection between mortal and immortal realms. Roman legions carried eagle standards into battle across 3 continents, their bronze representations of the great bird serving as focal points for military loyalty and imperial pride. These aquila became more than mere symbols. They embodied the spirit of Roman expansion, the pride of legions that conquered territories from Britain to Mesopotamia, the divine approval that Romans believed blessed their imperial mission. The loss of an eagle standard in battle represented not just military defeat but spiritual catastrophe, prompting expensive and dangerous expeditions to recover these sacred objects from barbarian hands. Native American traditions, developed over millennia of close observation of eagle behavior in the wild, recognized in the great bird qualities that went far beyond mere symbolism. The eagle's role as apex predator, its fierce devotion to family, its apparent fearlessness in the face of mountain storms, and its ability to soar higher than any other creature made it a natural representation of courage, wisdom, and spiritual connection to the divine. Eagle feathers became sacred objects, earned through acts of bravery and worn only by those who had demonstrated qualities worthy of the great bird's reputation. These spiritual associations carried practical consequences for wild eagle populations. The demand for eagle feathers, bones, and other body parts for ceremonial purposes created hunting pressure that, combined with later European settlement patterns, contributed to dramatic population declines across much of North America. The eagle's symbolic value, ironically, made it a target for the very cultures that held it in highest spiritual regard. The great bird's flesh was believed to confer courage to those who consumed it, its feathers to carry prayers directly to the spirit world, its talons and bones to possess protective powers against evil forces. Medieval European heraldry embraced the eagle as the ultimate symbol of nobility and power, with royal houses across the continent incorporating various eagle designs into their coats of arms. The Holy Roman Empire adopted the double-headed eagle as its primary symbol, representing the emperor's authority over both temporal and spiritual realms. These heraldic eagles, stylized and simplified for artistic convenience, bore little resemblance to the living birds that inspired them, yet their symbolic power influenced political and military decisions that shaped European history for centuries. The eagle's association with imperial power carried forward into the modern era, with nations as politically diverse as the United States, Germany, and Mexico incorporating eagle imagery into their national symbols. The American bald eagle, selected as the national bird despite Benjamin Franklin's preference for the wild turkey, became the visual representation of American ideals: freedom, strength, and the untamed character of a young nation carved from wilderness. The bird's recovery from near extinction in the 20th century paralleled America's growing environmental consciousness, making it not just a symbol of national character, but of humanity's ability to reverse ecological damage through determined conservation effort. Napoleon's Grande Armée carried eagle standards across Europe in conscious imitation of Roman military tradition, with each regiment's eagle becoming a sacred object worth dying to defend. The French military's adoption of eagle symbolism reflected Napoleon's imperial ambitions and his desire to link his regime with the grandeur of classical antiquity. These military eagles participated in battles from Austerlitz to Waterloo, their presence serving to inspire troops and intimidate enemies who understood the symbolic weight carried by these bronze representations of aerial supremacy. Modern nations continue to employ eagle imagery in contexts ranging from currency design to military insignia, often with little connection to actual eagle populations within their borders. The bird's symbolic associations with power, freedom, and divine authority have become so deeply embedded in human culture that they persist even in societies where few people have ever observed a living eagle in its natural habitat. The symbol has achieved a life independent of its biological inspiration, carrying meanings that would remain unchanged even if eagles vanished entirely from the wild. The eagle's role in contemporary environmental symbolism represents perhaps the most complex layer of its mythic significance. As apex predators particularly vulnerable to habitat destruction and chemical contamination, eagles have become poster species for conservation movements worldwide. Their recovery from DDT-induced population crashes in the mid-20th century provided powerful evidence for the effectiveness of environmental protection laws and the possibility of reversing human-caused ecological damage. The bald eagle's removal from the endangered species list became a symbol of conservation success, proof that dedicated effort could restore even severely damaged wildlife populations. Yet this symbolic burden brings its own complications for wild eagle populations. Protected by law and celebrated in popular culture, eagles sometimes become victims of their own symbolic success. Nest sites become tourist attractions, with well-meaning observers inadvertently disturbing breeding activities. The bird's protected status can complicate development projects and land use decisions, creating conflicts between conservation goals and economic interests that eagles themselves cannot navigate or understand. From its mountain perch, the individual eagle remains focused on the immediate challenges of survival in a demanding environment, finding sufficient prey, defending territory, raising young, enduring harsh weather. The great bird carries out these ancient behaviors with no awareness of the symbolic weight humanity has placed upon its kind, no understanding of the cultural meanings projected onto its daily activities. Its hunting flights, territorial displays, and family relationships continue according to patterns established millions of years before humans developed the capacity for symbolic thinking. Yet the accumulation of human stories, beliefs, and aspirations associated with eagles has created a feedback loop that ultimately affects the conditions under which real eagles live and die. Legal protections, habitat conservation, and wildlife management practices all reflect the cultural significance humans have attached to these great birds. The eagle's symbolic importance has become, paradoxically, one of the most important factors determining its biological future, testament to the power of stories to shape reality and the responsibility that comes with transforming living creatures into cultural icons. Migratory memory. In the hour before dawn, when the last stars fade against the lightening sky and the first thermal currents begin their invisible rise from valleys still wrapped in shadow, the eagle feels an ancient stirring that has nothing to do with hunger or territory, courtship or weather. Deep in the bird's consciousness, encoded in neural pathways older than these mountains, older than the species of trees that clothe their slopes, a magnetic compass awakens to whisper directions written in the planet's own electromagnetic field. This is the call of migration, not the desperate flight from declining food sources that drives many smaller birds, but something far more profound and voluntary. The eagle's territory could sustain it through another winter. The hunting remains adequate. The familiar routines of mountain life could continue uninterrupted. Yet the internal navigation system that guided its ancestors across continents now stirs to life, responding to signals both subtle and irresistible. The angle of sunlight, the shifting magnetic patterns that emanate from the Earth's core, and perhaps most mysteriously, the inherited memories that connect this individual bird to countless generations of eagles who have followed the same aerial highways between summer and winter grounds. The preparation for migration begins weeks before departure, with subtle changes in behavior and physiology that prepare the eagle for a journey that may span thousands of miles. The bird's appetite increases as its body begins storing fat reserves that will fuel long flights over landscapes where hunting opportunities may be scarce or unpredictable. Muscle groups used primarily for sustained flight begin to strengthen and develop greater endurance capacity, while other systems adapt to support the extraordinary demands of long-distance navigation and travel. The eagle's final territorial flights take on a different character as departure approaches. These are not hunting expeditions or boundary patrols, but something closer to farewell tours, the great bird tracing familiar patterns across landscape that has defined its life for months or years. Each thermal column, each favored perch, each hunting ground receives a final visit, as if the eagle is inscribing these memories more deeply into its consciousness before entrusting itself to the vast uncertainty of migration. The departure itself comes without ceremony or announcement. On a morning distinguished from dozens of others only by some internal calculation too complex for human understanding, the eagle climbs higher than usual on the early thermals, circling upward until the familiar territory shrinks to a map of itself far below. At an altitude where the air grows thin and the horizon expands to include distant mountain ranges and vast plains beyond, the great bird locks onto magnetic signals imperceptible to any human instrument and begins flying in a direction that it has never traveled, but somehow knows with absolute certainty. The route unfolds according to an ancient template written in instinct and refined by generations of evolutionary pressure. This is not random wandering but precise navigation along corridors that have been used by eagles for millennia, pathways defined by topography, thermal patterns, food availability, and the invisible lines of force that emanate from the planet's magnetic field. The eagle joins an aerial river of migrant storks, eagles, falcons, and other raptors, all following the same fundamental navigation cues toward wintering grounds that offer abundance during the northern mountains' harsh season. Mountain ridges provide the backbone of the migration route, their sun-warmed slopes generating the thermal currents that allow eagles to travel vast distances with minimal energy expenditure. The great bird rides these invisible elevators of rising air, spiraling upward in lazy circles until sufficient altitude is gained, then gliding forward for miles before finding the next thermal to repeat the process. This energy-efficient travel method allows eagles to cover hundreds of miles in a single day, while expending little more effort than they would use for normal territorial flights. The landscape unrolls below, like a slowly changing scroll, each day's flight revealing new chapters in the continental story written in stone, vegetation, and water patterns. High plains stretch endlessly toward horizons that seem to retreat as fast as the eagle approaches them. Desert valleys bake under relentless sun, their sparse vegetation supporting wildlife communities adapted to extremes of heat and water scarcity. River systems carve green corridors through otherwise arid landscapes, creating oases that attract not just migrating eagles but entire communities of wildlife following their own ancient migration routes. Navigation during migration relies on multiple sensory systems working in coordination, each providing different types of information that the eagle's brain integrates into a coherent sense of direction and location. The sun's position provides a celestial compass that the bird adjusts throughout the day to account for the star's apparent movement across the sky. At night, when thermal currents die and long-distance flight becomes impossible, the patterns of stars provide additional navigational reference points that eagles can perceive and interpret with remarkable precision. The Earth's magnetic field provides perhaps the most mysterious and sophisticated navigation aid available to migrating eagles. Specialized cells in the bird's beak and possibly its eyes can detect the subtle variations in magnetic intensity and direction that create an invisible map of the planet's surface. This biological compass operates independently of weather conditions, time of day, or visual landmarks, providing a constant reference that allows eagles to maintain accurate headings, even during overcast conditions when celestial navigation becomes impossible. Weather patterns become both obstacle and opportunity during migration, requiring constant tactical adjustments to long-term strategic goals. Storm systems may force detours of hundreds of miles or delay travel for days at a time, while favorable wind conditions can accelerate progress and extend daily travel distances far beyond normal limits. The eagle learns to read atmospheric conditions with the skill of a master meteorologist, detecting approaching weather changes in subtle shifts of air pressure, wind direction, and cloud formation patterns. Food availability along migration routes follows different patterns than those that govern sedentary life in established territories. The eagle must adapt its hunting techniques to unfamiliar terrain and prey species, often relying more heavily on carrion and opportunistic feeding than would be typical in familiar surroundings. Knowledge of where and when food can be found along traditional migration routes is part of the inherited wisdom that passes from generation to generation, encoded not in genes but in behavior patterns learned through observation and experience. Stopover sites become crucial elements in the migration strategy, providing opportunities for rest, feeding, and weather assessment that can determine the success or failure of the entire journey. These locations, often mountain ridges, river valleys, or other topographic features that concentrate thermal activity and food resources, may host hundreds of migrating raptors simultaneously, creating temporary communities that dissolve as quickly as they form when weather conditions favor continued travel. The social dynamics of migration differ markedly from territorial behavior, with eagles that would aggressively defend boundaries during breeding season now tolerating close proximity to other members of their species. Competition still exists for the best thermal currents and hunting opportunities, but the shared challenge of long-distance travel creates a temporary truce that allows multiple eagles to benefit from the same favorable flying conditions. Experienced migrants often serve as inadvertent guides for younger birds making their first journeys, their knowledge of optimal routes and stopover locations benefiting the entire migrating population. As the journey progresses and the familiar mountains fade into distant memory, the eagle enters landscapes that may be completely unknown despite being genetically programmed as destinations. The transition from montane forests to grasslands, from temperate climates to subtropical regions, requires continuous adaptation in hunting strategies, behavior patterns, and energy management. Yet the same magnetic compass that guided departure from summer territories now provides equally reliable guidance toward wintering areas that may be thousands of miles from any landscape the individual eagle has previously experienced. The arrival at wintering grounds marks not an ending but a transformation, as the eagle trades the role of territorial defender for that of temporary resident in a community of migrants from across the continent. Here, in marshlands or coastal areas or river valleys that provide abundant food through the northern winter, eagles from dozens of different breeding territories gather to wait out the harsh season in relative abundance. The magnetic memories that guided the southward journey now shift into dormancy, waiting for spring's return to reactivate the navigational systems that will guide the eagle back to its mountain home, completing a cycle as old as the species itself and as reliable as the turning of the seasons.